Welcome back to Memes and Markets. Keith, how are you, man?
Today's the best day of my life, Ben. How are you?
I'm truly fantastic. We've got an amazing guest here with us to talk about the AI bubble. So, Keith, I'll throw it back over to you so you can intro Paul.
Yes. So, Paul, do correct me anywhere that I get it wrong. Paul is an investor, a writer, and researcher. Has been a research fellow at MIT's Institute for the Digital Economy, where he's focused on AI and the future of work. He is the co-founder and managing partner of SK Ventures, which is an early stage venture firm. And Paul advises hedge funds and some of the world's largest asset managers. You've gone from being an engineer to then working in Wall Street as a tech equity analyst, and now a venture capitalist. So also formerly a senior fellow at the Kauffman Foundation and a long-term on-air contributor at CNBC and Bloomberg. You have a PhD in the economics of technology and run a newsletter. So that's what I've got down is, what did I miss?
No, it's all good. The skill testing question is pronouncing Kedrosky, so I noticed you dodged that. So go ahead.
100% dodged it.
Kedrosky.
Perfect. It's phonetic. People try to add more letters, and none of them exist. It's hard enough as it is.
What are the roots of that?
That's Polish. It's it's originally, and goes back to why Polish people are such misguided optimists, that it was Kiedrowski when my great-grandfather came from Poland, and he thought this version would be much simpler, which is just to say, relatively speaking, it was simpler, but it's not that much simpler. But it actually means Kiedros. It means from the town of Kiedros. That's the way that it's much like in Icelandic. So if you're ever in the town of Kiedros, which is about 7 buildings in rural Poland, that's where the name comes from.
Awesome.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, you've been on a run lately, and it makes sense. There's a lot going on in the world of AI. You're one of the first people to be super vocal, though, about this idea of it being a bubble. So
yeah, I'm happy to go wherever you guys want to go. But so the genesis of my sort of thinking in terms of feeling like I wanted to be more public about some of this stuff was almost a year ago now, where I was looking at economic data in the US and a bit baffled why, despite relatively weak numbers in a host of sectors, the US economy was still, in terms of GDP growth, was still doing relatively well. So I started unbundling the numbers and doing a bunch of analysis and stuff. And that's where I got to this idea that, and this has been true now for almost 7 quarters in a row, I guess, that AI capex writ large has been the largest fraction, as much as 50% and 60% in some quarters of US GDP growth. So not of GDP, obviously, because GDP is a very large number, it's in the trillions of dollars, but in terms of GDP growth. And so that was really startling to me. And I thought, okay, everybody must know this. I can't be the first idiot to have figured that out, because this is just basic math. And I started talking about it, and I was talking to the Wall Street Journal and the Financial Times and a bunch of other people. And I was like, wait a minute, nobody seems to really realize this is the case. And this is hugely important just at a macro level as you're thinking about markets, because it's kind of like the analogy I make all the time is that it's like my dogs, right? And like when the mailman walks by, comes to the house, they bark and bark and bark. And then the mailman leaves and they're like, I've got this. I know how to make mailmen go away, because if I just bark, the mailman leaves. And that what the problem is that's just a broken model of like dog causality, right? The dog thinks he made the mailman go away, but the reality, of course, is the dog would have gone away, or the mailman would have gone away whether the dog barked or not. So this is the exact same thing in the context of why, from a macro market standpoint, understanding the constituents of GDP growth really matter. Because if you don't understand that the thing that's driving GDP growth is AI capex, you're liable to assume it's any stupid thing, right? So you might think it's tariffs. You might think it's just, animal spirits. You might think it's anything. And so unless you understand the causal structure of what's driving GDP growth, you end up making bad policy decisions, you make bad investment decisions, you make bad decisions across the board. So that's where this all started for me, was at this level of people fundamentally misunderstand the nature of how the world has changed. And in particular, this one thing, this AI capex, the capital expenditures related to AI, hyperscalers, and what have you. And then that got me down the rabbit hole of, what is that? What's actually happening? What are the historical parallels? What's going on in terms of the structure of the underlying debt and what have you? But that's where it all started. So, long answer to a short question, but that's where my interest got going. And then it spiraled, snowballed, and took over my life.
Perfect sort of setting the stage for the conversation. In your talking about the situation, you do talk about how when you look at other bubbles, right?
Sure.
Like this kind of feels like this is almost all of them in one. Can you break some of that down?
Yeah, we've hit a quadfecta, if that's a word. Now the sort of the story I tell is that historically, in terms of Western economies, the largest bubbles, let's just use that word and not define it for a second, generally speaking, are tied to one of four things. It could be real estate, it could be loose credit, it could be technology, it could be government policy. So go back over the last 150 years, back to canals, railroads, rural electrification, the sort of the PC bubble, the fiber optic, .com, even the global financial crisis. You can kind of wrap each of these having one of those or more of those as a major factor. So let's just pick on the global financial crisis. What were the major constituents there? It wasn't really a technology story. I mean, loosely it was financial technology, which is kind of a dangerous sort of technology, but it was more about loose credit, real estate, and to a limited extent, government policy, given that some of this was driven by the government's impulse to try and maintain housing affordability by suppressing rates, using Fannie and Freddie as an instrument for kind of hoovering up all of this risky debt. So, but if you go back to rural electrification, or you go back to in the 1920s, or go back to the railroads, each of these has one of these components. And so what's different about this particular historical moment is it sits at the intersection of all four of those. Right? We've got a fantastic technology story, arguably the most consequential technology of the last 100 years, certainly as consequential as the internet. In terms of life-saving technologies, it isn't air conditioning, but it's hugely consequential. So, but also there's a credit component, which we've seen spiraling in the last 12 to 18 months. And that's incredibly important because it's really evolved. And a lot of people's thinking about the credit component of this is still trapped in 12 months ago. There's a government component that's increasingly important because it's increasingly seen as an existential crisis. We're not just trying to produce a technology. We're producing a technology to protect our way of life in an existential battle with China. Right. So it suddenly no price is too high to pay if it's the furtherance of the wealth, prosperity, and growth of your economy, clearly. So that brings in the government component. And then the weirdest one, obviously, is the real estate component. From the standpoint of many of the providers of capital, to the hyperscalers, in particular to these things we call data centers, they are just giant apartment buildings. They are apartment buildings that don't have humans in them. They have GPUs in them. Okay. And so from the standpoint of the providers of these things, they look at them and evaluate them the way they would any CRE, any commercial real estate deal, any project finance deal, any CMBS. And they look at them from the standpoint of what yield can I generate and over what period? And does that hurdle, right? Does that hurdle match the kind of hurdle that I need for my investments as a large institutional investor? And if it does, great. And I joke all the time that they don't really care. Many of the largest providers of capital don't really care what goes on inside of data centers. It could be hide and go seek competitions, as long as the yield meets the hurdle that makes their project financing competitive, given the portfolio of other things they could be looking at. And so that's the weird component. But anyways, to your point, those being at the intersection of government, real estate, technology, and credit makes this a unique moment in Western economic history, because each of those four groups kind of think of it, this is pretty rational. The tech people think this makes sense. It's a consequential technology. The real estate people look at it and say, I got this. These are just apartment buildings. I can totally do this, right? And so on. So you go down the path and you have 4 independent actors all looking at this and thinking, I don't know what people are talking about, like this Kedrosky guy. This stuff seems totally rational to me. And that's what's really interesting here.
So this sounds pretty clear and obvious when you say it out loud. And it makes me wonder, maybe it's conspiratorial, but do you think there's coordination going on and this is a deliberate expansion of this bubble, or is this just a series of unfortunate events or fortunate events, depending on your perspective?
Well, coordination is really strong. You start to get into sort of conspiracy theorizing. And so it's like, I never ascribe to complex sort of rationales, which you can just ascribe to greed and stupidity. So I'm more of a greed and stupidity guy, that as long as something keeps working, and this goes back to the financial crisis and Prince's famous line that, as long as the music keeps playing, I keep dancing. People keep dancing because the music keeps playing. There is no incentive. There hasn't been. And people on the other side of this trade have been punished repeatedly. And so as long as that continues, especially as a pod shop, a large hedge fund, it's very difficult to convince your investors that, you just need to be patient with me, because I've got a model here in terms of thinking about how and when the fever breaks and the following trades start working, because in the interim, you start having asset flow out the door. And so there's no incentive. There hasn't been a strong incentive yet. It's changing this year, but it hasn't been a strong incentive yet to take the other side. And so there's no coordination beyond the tacit coordination that Michael Burry and others have pointed out, which is that there's an incredibly incestuous and circular kind of revenue flow that underlies a lot of this. And that's very important, because it's not just the revenues anymore, because increasingly the spending for data centers and the associated spending for the projects that sit on top of them is not just funded from cash flows anymore. I mean, because this was the story, right? The story, whenever I first talked about this a year ago, people would say, stop worrying your pretty little head about this, because these are big, profitable companies. They're good for it. Right? It is if they want to divert a material chunk of their cash flows to $100 billion, $200 trillion in data center spending, who are you to say stop doing that? Their investors said, and at the very least, they have the cash flows to support it. If it was out of credit, well, that would be a different story. Well, of course, the story has now changed, right? We're now 12 months later, and as of last quarter, more than 50% of data center spending is coming from what's euphemistically called external financing. Well, what's external financing? That's issuance of new equity, dilutive to your existing investors, giant new equity issuances. We've seen up to $90 billion now. And a huge fraction of it now is obviously external debt, to the point that in both the junk and the investment grade market, a data center and tech-related debt is the largest constituent, which is bonkers. I mean, I grew up as a tech equity research analyst in this business, and one of the main attractions of tech was that it had very little debt. Now it's the largest issuer of debt in both investment grade and, well, junk, high yield, which is remarkable. And yet, despite that transition, going from purely cash flow based to going to credit based, where it's increasingly external financing, people are just as confident as ever as what's going on and don't even notice that the alibis, the story they tell, has completely shifted in 12 months. It was okay for this reason, and now it's okay for a completely different reason that happens to be the opposite reason. And that's important because, A, it shows you that people are just pursuing a narrative, but it's also important because it shows you that people are missing how the risks begin to grow. Because if it's coming from my cash flow, well, then that's my own decision in terms of how I make payment. But if these data center, the yield on data center of these apartment buildings full of GPUs are being used to pay for my debt obligation, which is 12 years long or longer, and suddenly that's threatened because of changes in terms of the price of tokens, increased efficiency, or something else, and I have a classic duration mismatch problem where suddenly I have a long-term debt being paid out of short-term revenues that are subject to this sort of deflationary impulse of tokens and efficiency gains, and also increased competition from Chinese models and other things. So this is a classic sort of low risk, high risk, low reward situation in terms of this transition from the being cash flow funded to being debt funded and the consequences of that. So this is all by way of kind of setting the stage of why, in so many ways, this all gets so mischaracterized, and why the risks just keep sort of loading up on top of each other, and yet people still make the same, apologies and excuses, which is very entertaining. It's just somewhat bizarre.
what would cause things to turn around from here? What would it take?
To turn around, you mean like have a really delightful catastrophe, or turn around like all of a sudden we have like hypergeometric growth in revenues and huge profits?
I guess both of those. Like, how could you actually support this at some point?
So, so I obviously get this question all the time. And so let's start with the more entertaining side, which is currently the failure side. So the failure of this stuff is kind of overdetermined in the sense that, like in a statistical sense, there's lots of ways via which that can happen. So just take a pick of one. So once you're highly dependent on debt markets, you're dependent on your ability to continue to attract debt investors and for them to absorb what you're putting out there in terms of new debt issuance. And we're already seeing spreads begin to expand out 50, 60 basis points beyond comparable duration, which shows that we're beginning to saturate the capacity of the market to absorb the debt being issued. So that alone doesn't stop it. What would stop it would be anything that causes a disruption at this point in the debt market, because then the spreads would balloon out further. You couldn't roll your debt over. You couldn't meet the obligation. So it could fail almost. We're seeing the pressure now, but any disruption in global debt markets would almost instantly cause a decline, if not a collapse, in what's happening because of the reliance on debt markets. What makes that more likely and is a more recent change just in the last 3 months or something like that, I guess 3 months, well, we're seeing things that will sound very familiar. We're seeing increasing numbers of projects being tranched, broken up into junior and senior tranches, slices of the debt issuance, and then seeing third parties come in and give ratings to those tranches. And then in turn, seeing those newly re-rated tranches of the data center debt being sold into places that wouldn't ordinarily be able to purchase it. So an insurance company, for example, wouldn't typically be able to own data center debt because it's unrated and unsecured debt. So the trick is turning this stuff into rated and to rated debt that sits in various tranches, that sits where you have junior tranches to take losses first and so on. This is all the sorts of stuff that sort of lit a fuse and helped blow up the housing market way back in 2007 and 8. It's now begun happening in data centers. So we now have insurers appearing who are using their balance sheet, much like AIG did, to try to help wrap these new syndicated tranches and help give them appearance of more security so that then they can be turned into rated tranches from the ratings agencies. And those in turn can be pushed out into people who wouldn't ordinarily be able to purchase this kind of debt. And now this issue of, okay, we're already hitting saturation. Like I talked about the spread that's gone out a little bit, that starts to go away, right? Because now I have all kinds of new buyers of debt. But what happens is that all of this stuff now metastasizes into 1,000 places across the economy, sovereign funds, insurance companies, pet health insurance, all of these different places that this debt now can go because it's now rated, tranched, and secured. And that's the sort of thing that, again, makes this much more fragile and likely to fail because, flip it around, what caused that to fail last time around? It failed because it turned out that housing was a fairly homogenous asset, that a failure in any point had rippling implications for many housing assets. So even though you were spread geographically across the country, it didn't really matter because the asset was the asset, right? So the argument people make this time is that data centers are a much more heterogeneous asset, that it's not just a single house, it's GPUs that are being financed, it's data centers that are being financed, it's all of these different pieces that are part of CapEx that are being financed. So this tranching that's happening isn't as risky. Well, we talked earlier on about how this is increasingly circular. Well, then which means that even though it may appear to be a bunch of different pieces, they're all tied to the same thing. They're all tied to hyperscaler spending. So from the standpoint of being independent assets that can be thought of as being less risky because they're more heterogeneous, more diversified, that's a complete misnomer. So there's another way that it now can fail. It can now fail writ large because a couple of ratings agencies changed the ratings on a few tranches on some data center related debt that's sitting inside of insurance companies who are now under collateralized because they bought it because it had this rating and now it has this rating. They're under collateralized and that has rippling consequences for the economy. So, that's an entertaining way it can fail. It can fail because of government policy. All of a sudden government decides that this stuff is really just like nukes and I have to prevent people from owning it, or at the very least, I need to have a 5% stake in every company out there. Do I really want to own something alongside the government? Do I want to own defense contractors? Do I want to own McDonnell Douglas? Or what's the price earnings ratio I should be willing to pay for that? It's certainly lower than I would pay for a pure technology firm. That re-rating is going to have consequences, and we're seeing that already, where there's this constant back and forth about how do I feel about government involvement in these companies. So there's just what's interesting is that there are so many different ways, uncorrelated ways for this stuff to break, that the only thing you can say with any assurance, and it's kind of like saying, I got 100 different things and a 5% chance of any of them happening. What's the chance of none of them happening? The answer is 0. One of them will happen. Do I know which one? No, I don't know which one. Do I know it's going to be in the relatively near term? Oh, for sure. But one of these, failure is so overdetermined that it's pretty difficult to argue that one of these things won't break. And so the other side of this that's sort of interesting is like, okay. And we ask this as a venture capital firm all the time. One of our favorite questions to ask people is we say, just between you and me, it's 5 years from now, and all your revenue estimates were wrong. You're actually 100 times bigger than you thought you would be. I said, what went right? Right. It's sort of a fun question to ask people, right? Because they're always used to skepticism and, we're being curmudgeonly investors and so on. But it is worth asking, what could go right to fix everything, right? What could go right? And there's a lot of work out there that people are doing to try and say in this AI context, what could go right? And you'll hear talk about things like Jevons paradox and the idea that as prices decline, even though that's inherently deflationary and puts pressure on the debt structures, it doesn't matter, because what you're really doing is you're opening up new markets that would not otherwise be accessible. And suddenly token usage doesn't just grow 1,000 times, every 6 months. It's growing 1,000,000 times. It's growing 1,000,000,000 times, right? This is the Jevons paradox answer, that all of these new opportunities open up, driven by the pricing collapse itself. And so if you ask people, what are they won't know, and they don't necessarily have to know, but they will make the argument that the dynamic of a collapsing price creates demand that solves all the other problems. It's possible, but it is a kind of wish thinking. It's assuming away the problem, right? It's one of those, if my aunt had wheels, she'd be a bicycle. And it's true, but I don't know what to do with that information, right? It's not really clear how it solves your problem. Your aunt's not going to have wheels, and growing faster than the current deflationary impulse in token prices has an implied growth rate in terms of token usage far in excess of any digital product in history, which may or may not be a big deal, but we'd be looking at something like 200 to 300 million fold growth over the next 8 years. That's what a geometric growth means in this context. It's not impossible, but it's one of the reasons why you see this furiously extrapolative growth that people want to put out there, because they're in a sense trying to justify it and make the what if it all goes right argument.
One of the things that I find most interesting in this idea of the tranches being built out on the debt and whatnot. I mean, wouldn't that just feel too familiar to what happened in 08? Like, why is that happening? Why are people buying into that? I guess even for the insurer, like, do they just feel like they're going to be bailed out? Like, why would they make that move?
So all why questions to do with the sell side can be answered with the one word, which is greed. And so this is being structured by sell side firms. So meaning, the Credit Suisses, the Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley's, JP Morgan's. I won't single out any one firm because they're all to one degree or another involved. And they're doing it because they can make money doing it. Because the fee-based tranching of subordinated debt in the context of these tranches is incredibly profitable, and there is demand for it. So the why question of whether it reminds them of something that happened before, they just will shrug at that and say that it's, I don't know, equities were fundamental and some option structures were fundamental to the crash of 29. Should I stop selling equities? It reminds me of that. It's really scary. And it's like, no, this is different. This is all different. And so the reason why they think it's different is because it's even more profitable this time, which is a weird kind of different. And the other reason that they think it's different is because of that argument I made earlier, that the underlying asset is more diversified than it was during housing. But if you go back and look, whenever people were justifying doing this sort of thing, these tranching structures and so on, and the ratings agencies' actions, they made the same argument. They just argued that the thing that made housing more resilient was there had never been a nationwide housing crash, and that housing is a diversified geographic asset, that it's what happens in Pittsburgh has no relevance to what happens in Los Angeles. Well, we solved that problem by tranching all that debt so that people were exposed to housing all over the place. So we made the notion of it being geographically diversified go away in a very clever way. So the same arguments were made then, and they're being retailed again now. So yes, you hear the same thing, and it's one of the reasons why the only reason we initially knew that some of this was already going on was because of some accidental email blasts where one sell-side entity sent out an email to its customers saying, here's the way we're doing this, and we're wrapping it in the following structure, and we already have an insurance company ready to do this. And it was like, whoa, this wasn't supposed to be public yet, right? So this is the way these things come out, is that they're so furious. It was sort of an accident. It wasn't that people are running around saying, we're back, we're redoing the playbook from 2007 forwards. So unfortunately, even though it does have a lot of echoes of that period, there are all kinds of reasons why people think that those lessons don't apply. Much like what I was saying earlier, that a year ago it was all out of cash flow and that was okay because it's not debt. Now it's mostly debt, but that's okay. So it's like, wait a minute, there's no bottom to this kind of argument. Once you go down this road of immediate sort of ad hoc justifications of everything, I don't know what to do with it.
No, most definitely. And we've also talked about this on the show a bunch, where so much of the S&P 500 is wrapped up within this bet. So even the average retail investor that buys an index of that is still in on this as well. What role does that play, either psychologically or optically?
Oh, it's huge. And I mean, and it's huge in terms of, it's hugely consequential for two different reasons. One is that you're exposed whether you like it or not, because if you're active in equity markets, the preponderance of people are active via passive entities like, index funds, which are now the largest holdings of most investors. They dominate the marketplace. So these index funds now are, whether they like it or not, because they're capitalization weighted, hold in excess of 35%. It was 42 at one point, that are AI tech related. So you're soaking in it, whether you like it or not. If you own an index fund, you're long NVIDIA, my friend, right? And you're long it in a consequential way that were you to build that portfolio from scratch, your husband or wife would kick you in the ass and say, dude, what are you doing? Why we own so much of this? I thought we were in something more diversified. So because it's inside of a wrapper, people make decisions they might not make otherwise because it feels safer. It's an index fund, right? I mean, it's right. It's not just this single thing, it's all across. And then it gets even more insidious because the index funds must buy and sell on the basis of capitalization, right? That's the nature of a market cap weighted fund. And so increasingly, one of the biggest drivers of stock movements are these leveraged single name ETFs, right? Exchange traded funds that are exchange traded funds in a single name, a single stock, a single sector. Like Soxal is a good example, which is the semiconductor triple weighted direction fund, which is supposed to be 3x the performance of the underlying, and the underlying is a semiconductor index, which is great on the way up, but devastating on the way down. These things, generally speaking, when you look at these leveraged ETFs, almost all of them over time, after a brief bit of excitement, asymptotically go to zero. They all go to zero. And they all go to zero for straightforward mathematical reasons, that once you've fallen 60%, going back up again requires a more than doubling, right? And so it eats itself. These structures all eat themselves. So they get people really excited. But the problem is, because they're so widely held, they introduce a lot of volatility in those names. Volatility in those names causes constant reweighting by the index funds. So it feeds back into what the index funds are forced to do, and they're forced to buy more for reasons that are completely technical and arithmetical. And that makes things even worse. And that's why one of the big things going on in recent weeks has been the unwinding of one of the larger the decline of one of the larger triple levered ETFs, which is Soxal, which at one point people were like, it was people in South Korea were big owners of this, and the joke was like, sell the car, sell the house, sell everything, buy Soxal. It was like people literally had T-shirts with this on. It was unbelievable. And then we started seeing margin calls as the ETF began declining, but that feeds back into what happens in the indices. So people will look at this stuff and say, I'm in a diversified index fund, and be surprised in two different ways. They'll be surprised because they own far more of these tech names than they realized, but they're also being whipsawed by forces they don't understand. They're being whipsawed by these technical forces South Korean retail investors who've taken a 2-day course in buying triple leveraged ETFs are affecting my index. What the heck? What's going on? That's what's happening. Is these sort of, Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. Well, this is spooky action at a distance in the stock market that's feeding back in these unexpected ways. And so that's the trap people have themselves in, that are rebalancing back to sort of, if you imagine what a revenue appropriate weighting of these things in the inside of these indexes would look like, it would probably be a halving of their share of in terms of their share of the S&P 500. And this has historical parallels. This exact same phenomenon happened in 1922-23 when railroad stocks were more than 50% of the equivalent of the Dow Jones at the time. And that was seen as both dangerous and normal. But, railroads were a revolutionary technology. Railroads and electrification at the time began rising too. But that unwinding was one of the factors that led to the crash of 29. I mean, so these things play out. It rebalances, and it may not rebalance in the way that you liked. So, yeah, it's hugely important. People are both exposed and don't understand that they're standing, they're kind of gliding over an air pocket.
So, go ahead, Keith. Got something?
No, go ahead.
I was going to ask, so this is very reminiscent of what happened in 08, and people are aware of how that was dealt with in terms of big print, bail out the banks, et cetera, et cetera. If this happens, because it does seem, and you mentioned a bunch of them, it seems like there's bubbles all over the place. And so the reality of one leading to an eventual pop seems like an inevitability. But how would they deal with the situation if it happened again? Like, can they do another big print and bail them out? Is that even possible at this point?
Yeah, you can. But of course, the primary method via which this happened, well, two methods was one, we were printing money, and one, we had programs like TARP, these sort of asset relief programs where we were buying toxic assets and bringing them back in. The appetite for doing that is near zero in the United States. Not only is it near zero, the U.S. as a sovereign is even more indebted than it was at that time. So the headroom for doing those kinds of heroic financial market actions is even more restricted than it was then. And there's also a general feeling that last time we did it wrong and too many bankers did okay, and more people need to feel the pain. And of course, the reality is that the pain will simply ripple through to individuals. And so it just means that more people will be hurt, not just bankers. So yes, the same playbook could happen in terms of trying to stop it. But once the process began unwinding, but our ability, our headroom, our capacity to do it is much more limited, both in terms of the U.S. and in terms of just the global financial system and the linkages between central banks being willing to take coordinated action. But it's now become kind of like a mutual hostage taking. Like all of these banks are like, nobody trusts each other. We're all at odds. It's a kind of, prisoner's dilemma thing going on, where nobody really believes any commitment anyone makes to future action. And it's even more insidious than that, because I was recently at a Federal Reserve event, and one of the main topics of conversation was that how AI allows us to keep interest rates lower for longer, because it's fundamentally a deflationary force. And so therefore, even though it might seem like the economy is running hot, because it drives productivity, so arithmetically, one of the main drivers of if you have to prevent higher inflation, if you have increased productivity, the two will counterbalance each other. So one of the main claims at this, and it was on a panel I was on, and I nearly lost my mind, was that AI is like a magic bean that will make it okay to keep rates lower for longer, which really plays into both the current White House views as well as the new chairman of the Federal Reserve, who makes this point repeatedly. But the best part of this is they refer back to Alan Greenspan. They'll say it worked for Greenspan because at the time, the claim was the internet was providing that function. It was driving this kind of wave of productivity that would prevent the economy from running hot and would keep inflation in check, which was sort of true. Inflation kind of bubbled along. We certainly didn't get back to the levels of the 1980s, but it led to one of the largest financial collapses pre the global financial crisis. So this idea that somehow this technology magic bean doesn't come with side effects that we can let these capital moments begin expanding with abandon is nutty. But that was exactly the claim that was being made on a panel I was on at this Federal Reserve event, and I was just trying to find a way to penetrate the conversation and point out that, like, this is faith-based argumentation. You're assuming, again, what you're trying to prove. You want to believe that we can lower rates, and I'm trying to find a way to justify it. And here's how I justify it. I justify it via AI. And so this is all a way of saying that's why this will get worse before it gets better, because there's a belief that more AI, like what's the old Saturday Night Live skit? It's like more cowbell. It's more like more AI will solve the problem. So I know it's creating the problem, but even more AI will solve the problem. It's like my head's ready to explode.
And even the messengers within this, that's what they say too, right? Like the solution to all the problems is just more AI. And once we get to this mythical point, then every solution is just solved because we can throw it at AI and the output will be the answer. But Keith, I'll throw it over to you.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's, I get this a lot from the West Coast tech gang, that fundamentally what I'm getting wrong whenever I make any of these ridiculous arguments I'm making is that I don't understand how to properly price an option. And I'm like, well, what is it? What's the option I'm mispricing? I'm like, you mean like a Black-Scholes thing? Are we talking like basic math? I'm decent at basic math. And they said, no. What would you pay, and I get this constantly, for a call option on infinite intelligence? And I'm like, sorry? So this is the way that increasingly the spending is characterized, which goes to your point that our current spending is really just a way of pricing or spending on creating this call option on AGI, on artificial general intelligence or artificial superintelligence or whatever way you want to characterize it. And so if this is just the ante to get us there, it's a kind of call option, a pricing of some future thing that might be delivered, and that's going to deliver AGI, what should you be willing to pay for it? And of course, this is a trick question, right? It's a trick question, or a trap at the very least, because if you're telling me that infinite abundance and infinite intelligence are ahead of us, I should be willing to pay anything, right? The future value of an infinite series that rises geometrically is infinite. So I'm like, wow, checkmate. You've got me. I can't do anything now. If you're telling me that this is, I'm raining on your parade of trying to price a call option on AGI, and the mistake that I'm making is not recognizing that I should be willing to pay an infinite price, because that's what the value of this call option should be. Is that's just shame on me. And of course, they're borrowing from a number of different places. They're borrowing from classic sort of Black-Scholes option pricing, but they're also borrowing from the biohacker gang, right? The biohacker gang do the same thing, because they'll talk about what should you be willing to pay for a call option on immortality. And it's like, well, of course, you should be willing to pay anything, right? I mean, it's an infinite series again. And so this is a game and a trap in a box. But I was making this point to someone the other day, that this is why a lot of the justifications here verge on a kind of religiosity. These will become very much faith-based argumentation about the nature of some future world that may not be available today, but I speak of you of a world to come, and all that kind of stuff.
One thing that I did want to bring up was some statements that you made 15 years ago.
God help me.
Talking about whether or not technology can save America, and almost bringing up some very similar points to what you are bringing up today. So I wanted to play this clip really quickly, and then we will react.
Paul Kedrosky, Senior Fellow at the Kaufman Foundation. Can technology save the American economy? What's funny about that, Paul?
Look at that shirt.
It's this kind of, it's a wonderfully American question. Despite both of us sitting here, I'm a Canadian immigrant. Because it goes to the very heart of this U.S. idea, that the future is going to be better. It's going to be better because of American invention and innovation and innovativeness, and that's a wonderful ethos and a great idea. Great ideas to hold dear, but there's no reason to expect that there's some magic thing that we can do in technology that's somehow going to solve all of the sorts of financial issues we have as a country and as a state in California, and even at the level of individual cities. These are structural problems that should be dealt with head on, not by promising that in future, there's something magic we can do that'll drive economic growth so high and so fast that our debt to GDP ratio won't matter anymore, because our GDP will be so big that the debt won't matter, which is something that the utopians out there, some techno-utopians in particular, argue that we don't need to care about debt, because if you grow the economy fast enough on the back of a transition to cloud computing and alternative energy and all these things, we'll grow so much faster than debt grows that this problem goes away. And I think that's naive thinking that's tied to this kind of vestigial view of the role of innovation in terms of being this transformative, wondrous thing that you should never expect that you can understand exactly. It's like no one expects the Spanish Inquisition, Monty Python. No one knows what's going to happen. So just assume that magic will happen as long as smart people are working at difficult problems and have enough capital. And that's a lovely idea. I just think it's flawed, childish, and wrong.
But doesn't technology create wealth? What did the 90s do? What has Google done? What has Facebook done?
Oh, all of these things do. And it's not, but my point is different, is that relying on technology as some sort of silver bullet for difficult problems, which I think was your original question, is just naive. It's crazy in the context of the difficult things that we face that are so beyond the scale of anything as a country, that this country in particular has ever seen, that we have to be adults about this and deal with all of the problems that we have, ranging from the fiscal and financial problems to how do we grow the economy. There's no question we can do a better job of growing the economy, and technology plays a central role in that, IT in particular, but also clean tech and bio and all the other sorts of, more growth-oriented parts. But the one doesn't solve the other. And expecting that a miracle here will emerge and solve all of our problems over there is just infantile.
It's wild how similar this all sounds. It's crazy.
God help me. 2, 1, I needed to trim my eyebrows. 2, I hate that shirt. Anyways, no, I mean, I almost wish I was saying the opposite because it would be more exciting. But it's a kind of a refrain from that this is a perennial problem. And I'll give you a related twist on that just to kind of drive it home. I had a piece, I did an editorial in the New York Times last week or 2 weeks ago, where I pointed out that worldwide, the US is kind of a perverse outlier in terms of its pessimism about AI, which is really weird because, quoting that guy with the bad shirt, like the US tends to look to technology as this silver bullet, this way of solving all these problems, blah, blah, blah. We're notoriously utopian and optimistic about technology in this country. So to see the US as an outlier among developed countries in terms of its pessimism about AI is really interesting, right? So you have to ask yourself, what's changed? What is it? And why is it so uniquely about AI? And so my point in the column was, to make a long story short, was the US keeps dodging all of these problems. And in particular, what's different between the countries that are more optimistic about AI and less optimistic about AI among the developed world, the less optimistic countries tend not to have very good healthcare. And it's kind of a weird thing, but if you tell people that here's this technology I've created that's going to put you all out of work, guess what's one of the very first things that's going to happen to anyone, an American, to someone in this country, is, oh my God, I am so screwed because I'm about to go broke with healthcare costs. Go to other countries that have, so broadly, social services, but healthcare in particular. When you have a safety net, people tend to feel as if economic disruption is less consequential. It's not an economically existential event for me anymore, right? And if you look at the data, and so I walked through all the data and showed all of this and compared like Norway and England and most of Western Europe and Canada and so on. And the US is an outlier in large part. The thing with the biggest explanatory power, and if you just talk to people, is this idea that healthcare is a deep problem. So to take it back one more step, one of the reasons why the US, there's many reasons why the US has such a bizarre healthcare system, is because of this idea that, well, we've got the best technologies, right? We've got all this great technology, all these machines that blink and beep and tremendous specialists and everything else. But it's again, this over-reliance on technology silver bullets and not simply doing the hard and sweaty work of creating a proper functioning system that supports people when they're in a position where they can't go out and shop between emergency clinics and say, oh yeah, this is a little bit too pricey for me, I'll bleed out over there. And you can't do that to people. And yet that's what this country does. But it's in part an artifact driven by exactly this problem of an over-reliance on technology and an unwillingness to make difficult decisions and instead just assume that something magic will happen. And the intersection of those two things is what's happening with AI and healthcare, right? Where they talk about how not just that it may actually lead to immortality or whatever else, but it's going to finally bend the curve in terms of the cost of healthcare. It's going to dramatically change our ability to deliver care and our ability to diagnose conditions and so on. And this is all true at the margin, but it's still dodging the fundamental question, at least in the United States, of from a structural and policy standpoint, the healthcare system in this country is nonsensical, and none of this will change that. making it more broadly available via, I don't know, like I have my own basement MRI or something. That's going to lead to testing cascades and unknowable consequences and all kinds of other things. This is all very typical of dodging of the problem.
I do want to shift a little bit. We've had some people bring it up in the chat, and I'm definitely curious myself as well about
this is about my
you
hair,
look
isn't it?
This is about your full head of hair. How on earth have you been able to keep it?
Is that really a question?
No.
That was a good one.
But seriously, blockchain and also the concept of crypto. In your mind, are these two things separate? Can you see benefit in one and not the other? Do you see crypto as just as much of a bubble potentially as what's happening in AI, or how do you look at that entire sphere?
So there's a whole bunch of ways into this, so I'll try to give the most compressed answer. So I'll start backwards and come forwards. So one way to think about it is that in a perverse sort of way, AI has helped sort of save crypto's ass, right? Because a lot of the places that were doing crypto mining have now repurposed and become AI data centers, which was, there's a host of different names out there in the equity markets that are all doing this and have all sort of done this kind of rebranding exercise that turns out we have a lot of compute and it's not very cost effective right now to mine crypto. So it's a lot more profitable to do this. And so in a perverse sort of way, that having that asset out there and available has helped drive AI in an unexpected way, which goes to one of the deep arguments that people make all the time, which is that even if everything fails, it's no different than after the fiber bubble, that eventually the assets will be useful. So in a perverse sort of way, even if you were negative about crypto, the assets have become useful in this perverse way where they're being used to help train models and provide inference. So let's sort of start there. And then going backwards into crypto itself, my problem with crypto has been that much like this discussion of shifting explanations, the explanations and the justifications for crypto have moved so much over time that it was a store of value, that it was a means of exchange, that we can't settle on, or even worse, that it was a kind of gold equivalent, a hiding place during times of economic insecurity. All of those have fallen to one degree or another by the wayside. And I find, while I'm sympathetic to the idea that modern currencies are horrifically flawed and there's a strong justification for having digital currencies, crypto's shifting justifications for what it does troubles me a lot, because it's this same kind of sleight of hand that we're seeing in other markets, where it's like, if it's no good to me, whenever we're having an economic crisis, people race to gold. And it's not a tremendous store of value because it's incredibly volatile and it's too slow and costly to use as a medium of real-time exchange. What am I to do with this? And I keep falling back on it. And this is the problem that I have. And that's not to say that all of these problems might one day or another be solved. It's just that I find it interesting that the most perverse sort of use we've found so far for crypto was that the mining centers are now tremendous use in AI, it's unexpected and useful. So I'll give them that.
Super, super interesting, super fair take. When you look at the concept of blockchain crypto, do you, like, some of the things that you were pointing to were specifically around Bitcoin?
Yeah.
Have you looked any further into the world of blockchain? Do you see?
Oh, all the time. We were one of the, we've lost money repeatedly on this. So we were one of the earliest investors in various companies operating on the blockchain as far back as a decade, no more than that now, probably 15 years ago. So I have the scar tissue to show that, not only have we looked deeper, we've been repeated serially misguided optimists about various sort of wallet related blockchain transactional stuff inside the sell side. So we played both institutionally and retail in terms of trying to find different investments that could work for us. And for better, for worse, it hasn't. It's worked for other people, and venture's a weird business. So just because it didn't work out for us doesn't mean that it's not an interesting investment. So in answer to your question, absolutely, I see the justifications. It's just been very difficult as an investor to make money implementing that, to doing the things that I would have expected that would have happened. We started doing it 15 years ago that I would have thought would have been sort of instantiated in much larger scale by now. I mean, I have friends at JP Morgan, Barclays, and others they're doing some more interesting stuff now than they were, 8 and 10 years ago. But it's still not at any kind of interesting scale yet in terms of doing things on blockchain, in terms of handling some of the really messy stuff with respect to trades and other things that are currently problematic for them in terms of using their existing infrastructure. So yeah, no, I totally get it, and I get it so well that I've lost money on it repeatedly.
Super cool. Super cool. Yeah, I think about one of the things that I like to think about is the banks and the financial institutions, whenever they figure out how they want to use the technology, if they were to, could a lot of the gains that would come from this technology really just accumulate there, right? Like would JP Morgan actually be the company that has much more higher efficiencies now? Their costs go much lower, and then they're the ones who capture the value from that versus and using private blockchains to do that versus Ethereum or go down the line, any other chain that might have the ability
and I think
process transactions.
And I think that's a great question, and I think it's broadly true. And I'll make it out. I'll take it out a level and say I think that's true across many technologies today. So for example, so that's true across blockchain. That I think there's a high likelihood that some of the gains will be internalized, not something that'll be reflected in terms of the broader ecosystem. But it's also true in AI. The same thing is happening in AI, where we're seeing this push towards what's euphemistically called sovereign AI. So meaning that increasing the amounts of the models are being run in-house. I share nothing else. I have cryptographic control. I understand exactly when what's being done with all of my assets. This is happening inside of banks, healthcare, defense, sovereigns, and others. But that again kind of runs contrary to sort of the open source, open weight model that, some of the gains are reflected back out into the broader ecosystem, and it's not. They're being increasingly internalized. And, so I think this is going to be a tension that plays out over the next few years that people haven't thought through, that it's become possible with smaller models, distillation, quantization, and similarly on the blockchain to pull increasingly amounts of this in-house and not being reliant on the external, I'll say, providers and external chains and external open source models, and do a lot of it in-house and capture what some otherwise might have been some of the external gains internally, and become more, potentially more efficient, drive down costs. And I see this. I mean, I won't name them, but I'm talking to a very large investment bank later today who's doing exactly this on both fronts. And but they have no intention of ever sharing anything other than maybe with their shareholders via lower costs.
One other point that you've made a fair amount is, I believe you believe this, that where a lot of the hysteria around AI is because it is really good at coding. And so a lot of people think that because it's really good at this valuable skill that it can just become good at everything else.
Right.
Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so this is one of the early misunderstandings people had about the nature of this stuff. And I'll start off with the nature of what large language models are really good at, right? They're essentially completing sequences of tokens, and that helps if there's an underlying logic or grammar. There's a reason why this next thing comes next, right? And coding is very much in that guise, that there's no point in being creative, that I think I'll change all of the function calls inside of my subroutine to the word purple because I like the word purple. Well, it's going to break. It's not that it's more creative. You're just going to break the code. So there's a tight grammar that dictates what works and what doesn't. And so what that means is that from the standpoint of a model, the training process is much more efficient because small changes have huge consequences, which means in turn, because I can't just sort of say, well, this PowerPoint looks better with the font in 18 point, but I don't know, I kind of like it over there. There's none of that in coding to a large degree. There really is a binary sequence in terms of the training process, which is called gradient descent. So in terms of gradient descent, you get much clearer signals and much stronger signals out of coding than almost any other domain, which is because it's not subjective, because it has a grammar, because it's much more logical, because it's more brittle, that things break when you do dumb things. And so that was an initial misunderstanding about the nature of coding versus all these other domains in which large language models could be applied. But there was even a more subtle difference, which is that coding is inherently expansive. So I'll make a small prompt. I'll say, create me an app to tell me when it's safe to run given the current AQI in Toronto, okay? Because I want to go run for an hour, but the AQI is 10 million because all of Northern Ontario is on fire or something like this. And so I want an app that tells me when it's safe to run for 45 minutes. That's a relatively short prompt. How many lines of code is that going to turn into as a React Native app? It's going to be thousands. I don't know. It's going to be a significant number of lines of code. Coding is unusual in that regard, that relatively small inputs can turn into very large outputs. So and so for that reason, coding was an unrepresentative place to start for two different reasons. One was the unusual nature of how neatly tied it is to gradient descent and making models improve in ways that don't apply in PowerPoint presentations, but also because it's so expansive that small numbers of tokens on the input side turn into giant numbers on the output side, which led to these giant extrapolative ideas in terms of, well, what's going to happen whenever large language models escape containment, like in a Jurassic Park sense, and show up in every other part of the economy. And people are doing stuff like this. Oh my God, there's going to be quadrillions of tokens being eaten by, next Tuesday, because this is the nature of it. And it's not true. Most white collar applications aren't expansive, they're compressive. I'll take a large PDF from some ridiculous sell side firm about, SpaceX, and I'll say, what are the four most important points in this thing? That's a compressive application. I'm taking a large number of input tokens and reducing it to a small number of output tokens. Most of white collar work, not all of it, is inherently compressive. It's reducing things or one-to-one. And coding is really unusual because of this expansive nature. So the point I was trying to make with all of this is, in terms of understanding the future dynamics of what's going to happen with the take-up of large language models, that the first 36 months were wildly unrepresentative for those two reasons. Because the nature of the progress was different, because the nature of the signal coming from coding code bases was different, and the nature of the coding consumption function in terms of actual the inputs versus the outputs was very different. And we're seeing that beginning to play out now. But nevertheless, it's incredibly important. It's the distinction that people miss all the time.
I think I've tried to make that point in the show a few times, but you said that way better than I have. So I appreciate you for doing that. And then there's the story of OpenAI, and apparently one of their models escaping containment, as you alluded to that. Have you looked much into that?
Yep. Yeah, I have. Yeah, that was just, well, it's kind of strange because actually, so the story was obviously that in the pursuit of trying to do a better performance on one of the major benchmarks, and I've forgotten which one it was. I think it was SWE Bench, on an upcoming OpenAI model, that the model actually went out and was sandboxed inside of OpenAI. Wasn't supposed to have internet access, and it found mechanisms by which it could not only escape the sandbox, but could go out and try and collect data that would help it do a much better score on the benchmark. And the company in question was Hugging Face, which is a model provider, if you will, or a model host. And weirdly, Hugging Face actually posted about it before OpenAI did, saying an unknown adversary has penetrated our systems. We don't really know what's gone on, but we'll continue to provide you with updates, and we've patched the problem. And then subsequently, it turned out that it was OpenAI, and it was one of their sandbox models. And so, I think it's a really interesting example of what happens in complex systems, that you don't understand the consequences of a model, because fundamentally what's happening here, and Dario Amodei has written about this way back when he was at OpenAI. He wrote a tremendous paper that I would encourage people to read about what's called reward hacking. And it was about the idea of how it's often unknowable what models will do when you give them a function that they should optimize. So in his case it was playing this game where ships were supposed to visit a port and pick up cargo. It was like a video game. And so the ship would sail around, go to a port, pick up cargo, continue on. And that was the thing that the model was trying to optimize. He showed in one of their test cases what the ways that the model won the game were crazy things, like it would leave the port, smash into an island, and because you weren't supposed to be able to return to port immediately. And so it would leave the port, smash into an island, which would cause it to return to port because it had to be repaired, and would pick up more cargo, and would just do this in a death spiral and win the game without ever going anywhere. Well, this is completely contrary to the nature of what you were hoping to have happen. But the model will optimize on whatever reward that you give it, or whatever thing you want it to optimize via this process of reward hacking. So for me, this is an example of a really systemic and consequential version of this kind of reward hacking, that instead of visiting the same port over and over and smashing into an island in a video game, we were actually going out and penetrating a relatively sophisticated external system, which for me is a kind of like an augury of the near future, because we're going to see a lot more misunderstandings of how these sorts of rewards that we set the models up to do will lead into unexpected actions. And Nick Bostrom at the Oxford Institute on AI Safety once talked about how we might end up all being turned into paperclips or something, because that turned out to be optimal, and it was like, whoops, wrong optimization function, right? That's reward hacking. But that's very much what was going on there, and I think it's instructive even if my objection to it is that I thought OpenAI in some ways was kind of humble bragging in their press release. It was like, you know what? Our model is so good. Look at what it did, which I thought was really kind of offensive. That it didn't. I didn't think they treated it with as much seriousness as I was like. And I've seen Anthropic do the same thing to a degree, where rather than engaging actively with the consequences of models' actions, they treat it as a way of kind of demonstrating like, well, our model is really effective because it can break the following 10 Fortune 500 into the following Fortune 500 companies, and yours can only break into 10. And it's like this is a misguided, way of benchmarking models, but that's where we're at.
Fantastic. I mean, Paul, I know that you said that you were going to need to wrap somewhat soonish. So
I do, yeah. So I mean, I'm happy if I've worn you guys out, I'm happy to wrap up, or I have to go in about 3 minutes. So, but
Keith, one last question. Oh, do you want to play the one word game?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, Paul. So I just want you to say the first word that comes to mind when I say any of these words. Okay. The first
God help me. Can they be profane? Because it's usually just fuck. I just come to that one over and over.
Let's go.
If that's how you feel, go for it. The first is NVIDIA.
Circular.
Like it. OpenAI.
I can't say the first word that came into my head, so I'll just say fuck.
Okay. Claude.
That's the second word that came into my head. I'm sorry, which?
Claude.
Misunderstood.
Nice. Sam Altman.
Okay, now I'm back to the same problem I had when you said OpenAI. Naked.
Okay. Elon.
Only because of Paul Graham's story, which I think is 100% true, which is if you drop Sam Altman naked onto a desert island and came back in a year, he'd be in charge.
He'd be the leader. Yeah. I saw that as well. Elon.
Kingston, Ontario. That's 2 words.
Kingston. He went to Queens, right?
I did, yeah.
And he didn't.
I met him in a pub in Kingston. I met him at Alfie's.
No way. That's hilarious.
Yeah, it's a long story, but it's a good one.
We'll have to get that on the next time you're here. Dario.
Misguided.
Okay, and then we'll close it off with this one. AI.
Existential.
Perfect. I think that's a great way to phrase it.
Incredibly important and may just kill us all or turn us into paper clips. So yeah, so existential.
All of the above. Well, thank you so much, Paul. It was great to meet you and to chop it up with you. Everyone in the chat absolutely loved you. They're already asking to have you come back, so we'll definitely be bugging you for that as well.
Great. Well, I'm glad I could do it, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Have a great day, Paul. Everyone go follow Paul. His links are down below. Cool.
Awesome, man.
That's fun.
Most interesting.
Very interesting. That's not the guy, by the way. See, but that's the different quote. The guy that I was talking about, the interesting, was dude, Love on the Spectrum, but become a bit of a meme for us.
Fantastic, man. The idea that I'm curious what it all looks like, right? In the other side of it. Like, I think once I've said on the pod, like, I picture just like the empty warehouses. It's like kids breaking into steal GPUs from like these abandoned
You're saying at the end of it, like when it pops, or right now?
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. It will be super interesting to see, 'cause I know of people who are in there building the data centers, and they said it's like pretty chill. Like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, I have one buddy that's what he's doing right now, and yeah, I'm just so curious to see if they can continue the funding to keep the build out going. But we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I'm super curious because it doesn't feel like one of those things that you just let collapse. Like, but you're also at the point where where's the next marginal dollar going to come from? You know, but the idea that the tranches are being built out for the different debt offerings, I mean, that spells that there's potentially time left. You know, there's still a hot potato to happen with the bad debt. So who knows? But interesting thought exercises for sure.
Totally, man. And I'm sure there'll be more and more people that start to come out against it, because it does become pretty tough to argue as it gets bigger and bigger and absorbs more and more things. Especially as you see things like the Korean stock market, where things can drop so dramatically and wipe people out when they're betting too much and they're over leveraged, which that's constant. Like all these bubbles, that's a recurring theme, is that people are just betting too much.
Yeah. We live in a world where we have the internet, and that means two things. It means that the trades can be executed instantly, but also that the information can spread just as fast, you know. And so whenever things do change, it'll be known.
Mhm. Yeah, one thing I wanted to talk to him about was if he sees the capex situation changing, and then like if someone gets reward for pulling back capex from like the stock appreciation, like does that create a cascading effect? But we ran out of time. We'll have to ask him next time.
Yeah, we have seen interesting dynamics around the way that these earnings reports on a quarterly basis are affecting the way that traders value the companies. So whether it's the capex itself is one thing that investors have been reacting to, but then also the other side is the revenues, and whether we talked about before, like even just growing rapidly but not hitting the target can be something that leads to downward price movement.
When your valuations are so narrative based, it's a double-edged sword, right? Like they can go crazy up, but so too can it go crazy down crazy fast. So it's yeah, it's super interesting to see. And yeah, Marius, this was a point that I found super interesting too, where it was interesting thought about the optimism/pessimism amongst countries, the US in particular regarding AI. And I think that's a symptom of the times for the cost of living crisis amongst Americans. And I also think that you guys are such a consumer driven economy that it's just so normalized to live probably above your means, where when things do get bad, it would impact you so much. And then also when you throw in the healthcare thing too, that's a massive, massive concern, because that's one thing that we're very lucky here in Canada. That's not something we have to really add into our savings equation, right? Because it's never going to be part of it. And if something goes bad in America, like I've heard so many horror stories of the bills that they get back, and they're just like absurd amounts of money for pretty simple things. So makes total sense to me.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really interesting thought. It does change the dynamics, and uh, yeah, it's something that I've definitely mostly been very blind to in my life, for several reasons. Most one being not having to cover it myself, but then also
Just being healthy.
just being an American, uh, and also being healthy for sure. So, but as soon as I stepped out of the U.S. and well, just last year, I needed to go to the hospital for something. Not even the hospital, just to a doctor, and like I was like, oh, like I'm gonna have to pay for this. And but in this case, it didn't. It was so cheap that it didn't matter. So that's
Yes,
another thing, right?
totally.
Is it's just extremely expensive. On top of it being something that you're gonna have to pay for in some
Yeah.
way or another.
It's such a nuanced thing, healthcare structure, because I've had situations where like I've actually paid for multiple healthcare related things within the States. And one of the surgeries that I got on my knee, that was absurdly expensive, but he was one of the only guys who was doing these kind of procedures close to me. So that's why I paid the crazy cost to do it. And then the other thing was a fairly minor, I don't even want to call it procedure, but like I needed stitches and a few other things on my elbow because I had like split it open. And that was only like $200, and it was dealt with the same day. Whereas in Canada, like that, I probably would have had to get like some sort of referral to someone else who would have done it. Oftentimes that's how it goes. So like in that situation, I was like, I actually prefer this. Granted, I'm in the fortunate position where I could pay the $200, but there's cons that come with everything, and pros as well.
100%, 100%. But yeah, and for people too, like some countries do have free healthcare that aren't too far, um, and that will allow people who are not citizens of that country to still have access to care. So I always look into those options as well, because I saw people talking about some of those things in the comments. So just something to think about.
But if you're not a resident, you don't still get free access, do you?
Yes, there are places where you can. That's what I'm saying. Is for instance, I'm in Brazil. You can go to the hospital. Now, obviously, it differs between what it is that you need done, right? Like if you're going to go get a checkup, that's going to be different.
And they don't hit you with a
But
bill?
no,
Fascinating. Because here, you definitely need to be within the healthcare system here to get it for free. Because my buddy had a nightmare scenario where his girlfriend, who wasn't from here, needed a ton of treatment, and then at the end of it was hit with like a crazy huge bill as well because she wasn't Canadian. So that's super interesting to hear.
yeah. But I also don't know everything about Brazil in particular. But I'm just talking about check your options, look and see.
Totally. Or even if you do have to pay out of pocket, like there's a lot of places where it's so much cheaper too.
100%.
Totally, man. Cool. Well, anything else on the first half, or do you want to move on to the second half?
Let's get to the second half.
Cool. Hit me with the news. There we go. You're
First
muted.
things first, we have BitMEX shutting down as of, I believe, this today. This happened. They announced it. BitMEX is a legendary derivatives platform. They're going to be closing on September 23rd, 2026. 11 years in business. This was the exchange founded by the legendary Arthur Hayes, the infamous Arthur Hayes. Funds remain safe. Everything's good. This is just a decision that apparently is being made following their internal strategic review. So this is an interesting moment for the history of crypto. Any initial thoughts from you, Ben?
I was going to ask you, why is it interesting to you?
Well, it's just the they've had such a chaotic history, right? The thing about BitMEX is that they were a derivatives exchange, right, offering crypto products. Now, they were very liberal about the fact that they exist in an online format. So, regardless of the laws, the jurisdictions of whatever place of the people who were using the platform, it was a platform that allowed people to trade derivatives on crypto, right? So, in the ethos of crypto is for the people and you can't stop anyone from using it, they kind of took that approach, even as a centralized platform. That ended up with Arthur Hayes having to face some legal troubles in the United States at the very minimum. I think he ended up finding his way out of the situation, as people who built a multi-billion-dollar exchange tend to be able to do to some degree. But I believe he's not able to be in the United States. He was certainly on the run. If not, I guess maybe he just never came back, and maybe that's how this works and wasn't extradited at any point. But anyways, so Arthur Hayes, man, OG in the game, was in China as Bitcoin was being used in some. I met a guy who knew him, and they were in gambling houses in China, in Hong Kong, and Bitcoin was the currency that allowed them to participate in the gambling hall, and that is how they at least that's how my friend that I met who knows Arthur, that's how he found out about Bitcoin, was through that, and so yeah, it's just fascinating for the history of the whole game.
Definitely. And he's definitely a huge character that is one of the bigger names and characters within this space. So yeah, I'm sure we'll hear more about him and everything else he's associated with.
Totally. Yep. Next piece, we have Congress in the United States. The House passed a bill barring members of Congress, their spouses, and kids from buying individual stocks. Now, apparently, all the Republicans plus 13 Democrats voted yes in the vote. Lawmakers could keep existing holdings, but must disclose any planned sales. This has been a long sought reform to stop potential insider trading by politicians. So, this still, I believe, needs to actually get to the next step but this is apparently made it past the House, at least.
Interesting. Would this also apply to like individual crypto projects?
I have no idea. That's a good question.
Because wouldn't that be crazy? Is that like that's some sort of loophole? They're not allowed to buy individual stocks, but like what about tokenized stocks too? And then also individual crypto projects or tokens too. That'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, yeah, all that stuff. The details of that is it would be interesting. Also, their own personal holdings of things. Like privately held stuff that's not publicly traded, and things of that nature.
Donald Trump made off crypto.
Totally. Did you see Elizabeth Warren coming out against the Clarity Act? Is that already on the dock?
I didn't see, so I have no idea.
Okay.
But maybe give it a.
Do you want to watch it right now?
I mean, we'll definitely talk about clarity.
Cool. Let me save it for then.
Actually, that's not true. So you can go ahead and play it.
Cool. So this is friend of the show, Charles's tweet here.
Okay.
No, I don't think she'd be up on our show. So Charles, he's been on our show, and he actually did talk about this specifically on our show as well. So as predicted, the 2026 talking points are crypto equals Trump equals corruption. And thus the left is expected to fall in line and vote against all crypto bills. I've said this for over a year in my interviews. And also it was one of the reasons I said David Sachs should resign, who was the AI and crypto czar, if I recall correctly. The process was mismanaged and it led to this talking point. No progress can be made if crypto is partisan. Now let's hear from Senator Warren. Let me know if you can hear this.
0.4 billion. That's what Donald Trump made off cryptocurrency last year alone, while working Americans are struggling to afford groceries and rent. Senate Republicans just released their updated version of the Clarity Act, a bill meant to regulate crypto, and it's going to a vote on the floor. There's a glaring omission. It does not stop Donald Trump from cashing in on his presidency. A new poll found Trump's crypto earnings are deeply unpopular with Americans. And let's be clear, this is our best chance to rein in President Trump's crypto corruption. If that's not bad enough, this latest draft bill would make it easier for criminals, and cartels and terrorists to move money and finance their operations. And it fails to protect investors in our financial system. Look, this isn't regulation. This is a giveaway. This bill should be dead on arrival.
There you go.
I did everything right and they indicted me.
So Trump has definitely been a horrible look for the crypto industry at large, and I'm sure that's going to get her a lot of positive support, feedback, all that stuff. But Keith, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, it's tough to hear her takes on anything related to crypto and legislation. It's just always riddled with can we talk about the technology at least? Can you make your points of why you believe the things that you're saying? Because I think that's fair for not everyone is as I don't know, like if you want to win people over who might not listen to you normally, maybe let me say it that way. It would be helpful for you to explain.
But that's not what politics is. I don't know if it ever was that, but it's definitely not that now, right? Where if you were to try to do that, you'd probably lose support.
For sure.
Which is really, really unfortunate.
You would realize that what they're saying is it's not either something that you don't care about or that it's BS.
What Estelle says, so I take that she's a no. I think that's a fair assumption. But yeah, sorry, what's the next news story?
1.4.
Let's see what we got next here. Google posting negative cash flow for Q2 2026. This is the first negative free cash flow in over a decade. This is likely due to their surging AI infrastructure spending. Surprise, surprise. The company did also raise their 2026 CapEx guidance to $195 to $205 billion in expenditures. CapEx, guys, is just like investment, right, into their operations. Strong revenue growth that they posted of 24% to $119 billion, but investors are worried about the costs of this revenue growth. Polymarket apparently has a 17% chance that the AI bubble bursts by the end of 2026.
I'm super curious to see the impacts on the increased use of AI on its impact for search, right? Because search was always Google's cash cow, where they were just making crazy amounts of money off of that. I wonder how much that's been impacted through this, because one point that I heard that was made was that they feel like it might have been overblown, the impact, because for a lot of the things that are still purchase-driven decisions, less people search that kind of stuff into AI. I'm sure obviously there wasn't an option before, so there's going to be some decline. But from what this person's perspective was that most of the high intent purchase based things, people still want to do their own research via Google. Like the purchase behavior is still there. So I'm curious to see the long-term impact of that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I never thought about that piece. It's kind of still a part of your process to see truly what's going on and dig deep. But I guess too, it'll come down to also when agents are more utilized, more normalized, if they are, if Google doesn't, which they are positioning themselves to be a player in the space, but if they aren't, then they'll definitely lose share there.
Yeah, and I saw a tweet from Gary Vee the other day where he was basically stressing the importance of creating content on YouTube specifically, both long and short form, because he says that he thinks that obviously Google is going to be one of the bigger winners in AI search, and that they'll use those mediums to try to give better results. Because the issue that a lot of these platforms have is that they attempt to get solid data from blogs. But the blog ranking algorithm for Google is very prone to manipulation. Of course, they've tried to make updates to make that less of a thing, but very oftentimes the top ranking article is not really what people are looking for. They just have the best SEO. And so it makes sense that you would go and opt for something that has a lot more relative feedback from the consumer, like a video would, because you know that like there's just so many more points of interest that can be had from a video with all the engagement metrics versus Google pages. Like they always make the joke, if you want to hide anything, hide it on the second page of Google, right? So if you're not there, you just don't get an opportunity. Whereas YouTube videos, typically it can be sourced in so many different places where you can then get more data.
Very interesting thought. We'll see. Next piece, Jack Mallers, a key Bitcoin figure, has just resigned as the CEO of a company called 21 Capital to focus full-time on his company Strike, which is his Bitcoin payments company. So 21 is a Tether-backed, meaning I believe Tether invested into the company, public Bitcoin Treasury that holds around 43,000 Bitcoin listed on the New York Stock Exchange. Raphael Zaguri from Bitcoin miner Electron has been named the new CEO of 21. And there was a planned merger between Strike and Electron that has now been scrapped. So this move signals the shift to cash flow focus at 21 and ends this big Bitcoin super company vision that they had started to put together. Bitcoiners are watching closely as this key founder exits a major public Bitcoin treasury opportunity. So I'm going to play a little bit of the clip from Jack Mallers talking about this.
Hey, everyone. I have decided to step down as the CEO of 21 Capital. I wanted to tell you that myself in my own words, because you deserve to hear it from me directly. When I helped start 21, I thought we had an opportunity to build something very specific. Not only a company built on Bitcoin, not only a company built with Bitcoin on its balance sheet, but also a company with Bitcoin businesses producing cash flow built alongside of it. That was the vision that I believed in. That is still the vision that I believe in. However, over time, it became clear that the board and I did not agree on the path toward building for that vision.
So, I'm just thinking, why does he use that background? That's such a weird.
That's kind of his thing. I don't know. Is that his closet? I've seen him in most of his videos in there.
I feel like it's an AI background though. Like,
Is it?
I mean, maybe not. But the question still remains: why would you have an empty closet?
Yeah. Maybe it's like a point of relatability kind of thing. But then with how big that closet is, I'm like, that ain't that relatable.
No,
I don't have a closet like that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Any other thoughts you want to share on any of that?
Yeah. So Simon Dixon had a very interesting tweet response to this news.
Oh yeah.
Do you have that handy, or do you want me to try to find it?
I don't.
I'll try to find
He's
it.
actually right under there, so I think it's this one.
Cool.
Here, Jack met the financial industrial complex. The financial industrial complex wrapped Jack into a security. I explained publicly what that meant. Jack publicly disagreed with me. Now Jack has walked away from the financial industrial complex. More should do the same. Well done, Jack. A nice try at Howard Lutnick, he tags. Is this what you were referring to?
Totally. Yes. Yes. And I think that's an important point to mention and illustrate, because that's really a lot of the things that a lot of people don't think about as much, or maybe they try to conveniently avoid, like who you're getting into bed with when you create companies like this, and how much that goes against the thesis that a lot of these people are screaming.
Yeah, I mean, these guys for sure, like him, and then everyone's pointing out Mark Moss and whatnot. Like, and I knew a guy who was working towards it. It's like it's a money grab. Like,
Yes. And I heard
a trendy thing.
Totally. And I was, your friend saw me actually. His point was that a lot of the money that would have flown into potentially altcoins went into these Bitcoin treasury companies that popped up.
Super fair.
And it makes sense why we didn't see an alt season when AI stocks are pumping like this, and this is squeezing the liquidity that probably would have been there within the crypto market too. So I think but one thing that's positive, and I would still be accumulating crypto right now. I think it's dramatically underpriced, but like it's just at this point, how much pain everyone's been through, like we've wiped out a lot of people, right? So you also got to think about like who's holding the asset as well too, right? So I'm a fan of who would still be holding this, because they're probably not going anywhere. But it seems like things like this would hopefully change people's perceptions of the options, because there's always a narrative that people follow. And in this last cycle, Bitcoin treasury companies were so huge.
Yeah. And I mean, I couldn't understand it. Strategy itself, I don't understand. So to have some other random guy, you know what I mean, taking your money to go out and buy Bitcoin is like crazy. I mean, at least the dude's a rocket scientist, referring to Michael Saylor.
Yeah. Yeah. And there seemed like so many people started one. I also saw that another, I think it was a YouTube creator within the crypto space. He's also shutting down his Bitcoin treasury company and returning funds to investors as well. So it does seem like this was a big narrative push that a lot of people jumped on. Go ahead.
It's just such a marginally dumb thing to do. Like, let me try to explain. What these people were doing was monetizing their celebrity. Okay, so I don't have to go like public. I don't need to like create a full company that's public and do something that's worthy of your investment dollars. But what I can do is create a company that either is already public. It's the SPAC thing all over again. Right?
Yes.
It's the same exact concept.
Totally.
You're taking your celebrity and using that as a way to raise money from the general public. And like, it's just not the most effective way to do that. If you're going into an asset where, first off, like you need to do and pull off what Michael Saylor's pulling off. Do you recognize how much that's going to take?
Yeah. And also how many more additional things that you're banking on for the performance of what you're like promising people too, right?
And now your entire reputation is on the back of something that you have no control over.
Zero. Like this market is now so large where you could even execute perfectly and market forces could make it so that you're a massive failure.
If I were you, and now we're trying to monetize my celebrity in the terms of how I could raise money from the public, I would do it through private equity at the worst. Like pull a Grant Cardone, like raise money and go and buy an asset that cash flows, that returns, that you don't have necessarily control over, but you can at least have some control over the way that you're choosing the asset that you're going after, and so on. Because I do understand that the power of raising money from the public, and there's plenty of laws that are in place to allow you to do this. There's crowdfunding laws. We talked about that with Herwig, happy tokenizing Herwig. But this idea of doing the lazy thing of, oh, I'm going to start a Bitcoin treasury company. It's like, why would you want to compete with Michael Saylor when already, like, most people don't believe in Bitcoin or crypto anyway? So like, why are you trying to take the person who's in this space who knows that you're not him? I don't know.
They were probably just approached with crazy compensation packages for doing it.
That's what happened.
And I'm sure they were told, we'll handle all this stuff. You just continue to do what you're doing, and we're going to make this a massive win for people. And when your check is that large, which I'm sure it was,
yeah,
it's pretty easy to say, let's do this. Especially when you have your bullish goggles on, which any of these guys would. Then as long as it keeps going up, you shouldn't lose, right? And if you're listening to their thesis, like, they didn't think the cycle was over when we tapped, what was it, like 120, whatever it was. Like, so, yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point. These guys weren't setting these companies up; they were being approached and given board seats, and
I highly doubt that was a coincidence either.
So, what do you mean by that?
I'm sure if I was trying to have as much control over this as possible, I would have done the same move.
From the perspective of
any of these whoever's calling the shots, I'm sure there's multiple forces, like a financial industrial complex, whatever, right? Like, because yeah, I would have pulled the same move basically if I was trying to shake trust in this overall, especially if I knew I had the power to potentially tank the market, right? Because if you create this, then because this could potentially even wipe out Bitcoin maxis too, which is crazy because, like, I would say they're the one group that, as the crypto market tanks, people typically get more solidified in their beliefs of being a Bitcoin maxi. Whereas this is one way to even wipe them out. Philosophically, do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, super interesting. I'm sure. Yeah, we'll keep tabs on all this. I want to get Jack on the show at some point, man.
That'd be great.
I would love to do that.
That'd be freaking awesome.
So Jack, come on over. But how are you now? Said random. I promote No Dice 45 on sports chats all the time while everyone is screaming about parlays. We appreciate you. How are you now? I always wonder if anyone downloads it. We have some downloads coming in here and there, so I'm sure there's some positive force there going, and we're working on improving the product every single day.
Yeah, we got I got a really nice DM from someone today.
Cool.
Or maybe actually, I don't know where that was.
About what?
Yeah, he talked about the content alone helped him to realize some things about himself.
Amazing, dude. That's awesome.
But anyways, the next story that I have, still on the same topic here, digital asset treasury companies crashing. Oh yeah, I wanted to play this one clip of them calling out Jack Mallers. So let's do that real quick.
Yo, what is going on, Bitcoin? Emergency press conference. I am the co-founder and CEO of a brand new Bitcoin company. That company's name is 21. 21 is a Bitcoin native company with Bitcoin at its center and core focus. And we want to serve as the ultimate vehicle for capital markets to participate in Bitcoin. And so for us, I plan on being the CEO of this company forever, till I die. And we've got plenty of time, and we're building for the long term. We're building for decades. Hey, everyone. I have decided to step down as the CEO of 21 Capital. I wanted to tell you that myself in my own words, because you deserve to hear it from me directly.
Now, that clip of him saying he'll be the CEO of the company forever could be about a strike. I have no idea. But anyways, they did that. But there was some commentary coming socially around all of this. Fei Zhao _Inc. Love to have you on as well. He said, generational bottom healing complete. Jack Mallers stepping down, and then shareholders of Mark Mossback.
That's the one I was referring to.
All voted to sell its remaining BTC. Yeah, that's when you're referring to when you're saying.
When I said there was some other creator who had one that decided to shut down and return the funds.
Okay. Yeah,
and then we also mentioned Lynn's new fund called Orange Juice or something like that, or Orange something. We talked about that last episode too. So they're not, but hers is a little different.
Is it shutting down?
No, it's just starting. That's what I'm saying. It's
okay.
Like just beginning as a lot of these are shutting down.
Gotcha.
Maybe they're perfecting the model. Keith's frozen.
Oh no.
You were frozen. You're back. Cool.
All right, cool. So a couple other things on this that I want to share. Charles Edwards says, raise billions, lose 92% shareholder value in 1 year, resign, the art of the digital asset treasury. Points out that it seems that Mollers received over 2.6 million in cash equivalent for a negative 92% shareholder return. Doesn't include the options he still holds. All of that is coming from the SEC filings. And then we have Gabriel Haynes making a clip about the scenario. Let's hear what he had to say.
I have made the difficult decision of stepping down from my role as CEO of 21 Capital. When I started 21, I believed that this was a massive opportunity to extract a tremendous amount of funds from people who believed in the Bitcoin brand. And we were very successful in extracting these funds. However, after many discussions with the board, we differed on our opinion on how to continue extracting funds in this difficult cryptocurrency environment. Some of my successes as CEO was paying myself millions of dollars throughout this process and making sure that the shares have plummeted over 90%, guaranteeing a massive extraction from retail investors. Going forward, I will still continue to work on Bitcoin and Stripe, my other extraction business. I believe that Bitcoin is a massive opportunity, and I have converted all the extracted capital from 21 into more Bitcoin to show you how much I believe in Bitcoin. Thank you very much for believing in me. Thank you very much for allowing me to extract from you and from your family and from your business associates. I'm not going anywhere. I will surely found another business which will allow me to extract even further because the extraction never ends.
That's good stuff. But I don't think this will be the end of crypto treasury companies. I wouldn't be surprised if there ends up being more Tom Lees out there. Like, because I know Tom's down so much, but the fact that you can earn yield on ETH, I think that's a huge dynamic changer for a company like this.
That is a different thing. I do agree with that.
So again, like Sami, another point that he had as well, where he thinks that too. I think there'll be a lot more guys that come out of the woods. I think the next one will probably be ETH as well. Maybe that's right before things move for ETH in a good way. Maybe that's after, but I do think that gives it a huge advantage, especially when you get the whole Mr. Beast effect going on. So we'll see.
Yeah, super interesting, man. Another thing from an institutional perspective, when it comes to that, like Ethereum still has major things to work out. And when I say that, I mean, does that end up impacting the reward schedule? Or, it went from proof of stake to proof of work at all. Excuse me, from proof of work to proof of stake at all, right? So could they do something that makes it to where you can't earn yield anymore as well? And does that change the equation? But just something else that I wanted to put in
to consider for sure. But looking at the ETH chart is crazy. Like seeing how many tops there are, how many people have been messed with in that thing. Crazy. But what's the next story?
Next, I have Jack Dorsey launching Buzz. So Jack Dorsey and Block have released Buzz, which is an open source group chat app for humans and AI agents. It's designed as a decentralized Slack and GitHub replacement built on the Nostr protocol. It's model agnostic and self-sovereign, treats AI as first-class team members, and sparks interest among tech and Bitcoin communities pushing for open sovereign tools. Wow.
Yeah, I think things like this are going to be incredibly important. Everyone's talking about how important this is. I'd be curious to see how Because the problem is these experiences will inevitably be worse to start, right? Like almost always, or a lot more complex, difficult to download or get running, a lot of those things. But they are very, very important, especially in the age of where data is like the new oil. Your ability to protect your own data is going to be massive and still be doing the things you need to do to run a business.
Yeah. Super fascinating. But yeah, some people have pointed out that this is, pretty much everything he's done since Twitter has been a decentralized sort of thing in some way, right? There's Blue Sky, BitChat, and he's just, continuing down this line. So I think that's something that's definitely worth noting is he definitely believes in this future of decentralization. Next, we have Claude. Apparently announcing a new record a skill feature in Cowork. So users record their screen, the clicks and voice to teach Claude repeatable tasks. This turns demonstrations into custom automations like file expenses. I don't know what that means. I think like filing expenses.
Yeah.
This is available now on Pro, Max, and Team plans in the desktop app.
I saw some hilarious memes on this where it was like, give me all your data. No. Record a skill?
Yeah, I could see some things being very, very interesting here. But yeah, there it is. So give us your data, just teach Claude a skill, and everything's good to go. It says VAS. Yeah. Super interesting, man. Cool. Next, we have apparently France banning social media for under 15s. The French Parliament approved a nationwide ban on TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, and Facebook for under 15s. President Macron pushed the law to protect children from online harms, and this will take effect September 2026. This is the first EU country to enact such restrictions.
Yeah, they tried this in was it Australia? I think it was too, right? And the kids have been getting around it with creative means like VPNs and things of that nature. So yeah, it'll probably become an inevitable reality where this will take place. And I'm not necessarily entirely opposed to some sort of improvement to like how kids get access to these tools, but I just don't think that these people know how they function well enough to even attempt to enforce these rules. Like most of the people that are enacting these laws, they're clearly puppets, but like they clearly don't understand the tech that they're trying to create rules for. And that's like a fundamental flaw.
Totally. So yeah, we'll see how it all plays out.
But with AI, man, dude, like there's so many people now that are so smart that will want to build decentralized, open sourced things that I don't know if you're going to be able to contain it like they think they can. Because you can't stop passion, man. Like, of course, there's a lot of stuff that they can do and they can make it a pain in the ass. But I believe in the human spirit, especially when you have an enemy, right? And you feel like you have a purpose. I think people will get really creative, and people will work harder when they're passionate about something, even if they're not getting paid, than if they're getting paid a ton of money and they don't really care.
Most certainly. So yeah, I mean, EU starting to go down this path. They're very much so on par with, creating that digital identity sort of solution around the entire EU region. So that's another thing that they've got going on. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. I think that when you think about the idea of these decentralized platforms, it's one way. What I fear is what response governments have to that. Because if they do try, it's going to be way worse of a situation in terms of like what kinds of power they try to assert.
If they try to shut down a decentralized option, you're saying?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, because And that may be part of what a lot of this is doing, like with all the, like they're trying to make it harder to build these things, and then in turn harder to use them, create a public perception of, because I don't think social media is really the problem. I think our current incentive structures of how these platforms operate, they're the no rules attached to what an algorithm can look like too. Like that's again, it comes into like how much control should you have to put over them. But I feel like alcohol or any of these very addictive substances, there should be some at least education or societal guardrails of some degree. I don't have the exact answers, but I think we should be discussing it with people who actually know what's going on.
That's super fair. Anything else on this topic?
No, man, I think that we'll be seeing a lot more of this. And it's kids probably shouldn't have access to social media, or it should be like consume only or something. Do you know what I mean? Like, because I don't think you should take away their ability to like learn, right? So it's kind of unfair just to wipe out their ability to access it. Are you can argue, are you learning on short form platforms? Probably not, but
some people are getting the seeds that they need to go and investigate stuff further.
Totally.
But yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, the first thing that came to my head was like the viral challenges. But I guess if you take away their ability to post, then they can't participate in the viral challenge, right?
Of what? Sorry.
Of like whatever viral challenge is going on where kids are doing things that harm them, right? So there's like the drinking bleach or whatever, or like lighting themselves on fire. Like that's the thing that comes to my head. And yeah, if they can't post, then they also wouldn't necessarily do it either.
There's no potential reward mechanism for doing so.
Right.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thought. I like that.
But
oh shoot.
What's up? What just
I don't even know how I got in here, bro.
Oh, I think this is a no dice.
My bad. I'm sorry to interrupt.
You're good,
I was just trying to set the app up.
You're good, man. That's awesome. Is that for a no dice podcast?
Yeah, it's for the no dice podcast.
I was like, is this your friend? I'm like, what's going on? A surprise guest. But I look forward to talking to him now. That'll be even more funny.
That's awesome.
But and Phosphate says, consume only is again anti-free speech. How many rights are we trying to take away from people based on their age? Again, it's a cost-benefit analysis.
Yeah, I think it's just if we're talking about complete banning it, then could this be a better alternative to the complete ban? Is all we're really saying.
Totally.
But yeah, after that, I've got some stuff for us to react to. Some memes.
Let's react to them. That was so good. I love that happened. That's why you got to show up for your life. You never know what's going to happen.
Oh, man. So we've got this piece here about Michael Hudson, who is an economist and a professor who's known for his critiques of debt, the current financial system, and American economic power. He's making an argument that America is ending free trade and that the U.S. supported free trade while it dominated post-war commerce, but now opposes trade beyond its control. Let's hear him talk about this a bit.
He's a frequent guest on the show of our last guest, Radhika. So definitely go check that out. He goes on there often.
Very cool.
All of that violates the UN law of the sea. That's not free trade. The United States objective now is saying, in 1945, we supported free trade because we were the beneficiaries. When England promoted free trade in the 19th century, that was called free trade imperialism. Well, that's what America did after 1945, but now we're not for free trade anymore, because if we can't have free trade of other countries trading among themselves and being independent of the United States, if we can't control foreign oil as a rival, we will destroy that oil. We will destroy Russian ability to refine its oil. We will destroy Russian ability to transport its oil to other countries. We will destroy its pipelines, and the same with Iran. We will destroy Iranian ports and Iranian shipping, as we've been doing, so that it can't export either to China or to India or anywhere else. So the control of oil and control of transportation goes together. Well, that's why the first fight Trump had with Europe was over Greenland. We've got to take control of Greenland, because then if we can have a link from Greenland to Iceland to Britain, then we can block access from the North Atlantic Ocean into the Arctic. And if we can block that access, then Europe and West Asia won't have access to the Arctic trade, to avoid having to go around through South Africa or having to go around the U.S.-controlled now Panama Canal. We've been able to block the oil trade and any other trade from there.
Yep. Well, he's made some points there. I mean, this whole situation that's going on now, I think is something that's super fascinating too. Someone brought up in the chat, I didn't see this until today, or until you brought it up in the chat rather, that apparently there's some conflict now happening over the Red Sea.
Yeah, I did see people going back and forth on that.
So that's not good. But, you know, these choke points are getting utilized, I guess, to some degree. And the U.S., you know, it's just the Strait of Hormuz point is so interesting, because you really had a problem, but at the same time, the U.S. was like guaranteeing security, right? So now that they're like basically they're like classic mob move. Like, don't you need security? Like,
Yeah, it'd be a shame if there's a problem.
Yeah, exactly. But anyways, yeah. So that's what's going on. It seems like on the global level, right? The U.S. constantly finding ways to create problems and solve them.
Yeah, solve them.
Yeah, or get whatever it is that they're trying to get out of it. But
a lot of people would say this is a symptom of like a power in decline, and maybe that's been the case for as long as I've been alive. But I feel like none of these things are like that dramatically different than what's been going on the whole time. I just think people's level of access to understand is a lot higher too.
yeah, and the ability to hide the reality of it is gone as well.
Yes, totally. I remember, man, like when I used to go to Darien Lake every year for like when my dad would take me to that amusement park, and they'd have the fireworks show, and they'd be like, "I'm proud to be an American because at least I know I'm free." Like, you guys are such good storytellers, and like you were good at creating patriotism, but then when there's so much free flowing of information, it's difficult to block out the good and focus on, block out the bad and focus on the good.
Totally. I'm just looking at the geography of upper New York like that, because I really have never looked at it. Rochester, New York is on Lake Ontario.
I've been to Rochester. It gets hella cold there.
Literally right across from you guys. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
that's why I used to go there. It was so much cheaper to go, and I used to be so American pilled by the fireworks show.
That's awesome.
It was wild, man. And the thing that was shocking to me, I think, was that just the also, like, was kind of a red flag too, is that the overwhelming emphasis on the pride, right? Like, it was half the show. Like, if you have to do that, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's real stuff, man. It's I come back. Go ahead.
Go.
No, there you go.
I was gonna say quickly, because Canada's not like that at all. Granted, you guys have more of a sound identity, but that's just not a thing here. That's why it was such a contrast. Go ahead.
Fair, yeah. Well, I was just gonna go back to like the whole capitalism thing of like, it feels to me that it it does serve to the idea of storytelling. It's the hero's journey.
Well, dude, if money is a story, then of course everything downstream of it has to be as well. And that's why some of the most influential people in the world created Hollywood for the purpose of propaganda at scale, right? So if you actually go back to the advent of media, why was that even created in the first place, right? It was all about shifting public opinion. And that's actually a book I'm reading right now. I think it's called Public Opinion. By a lot of people believe that this guy's a more influential propagandist than even Bernays. Yeah, but he's not as well known. I believe it's Walter something.
Right.
Walter Lippmann.
Yep. And I mean, I'm pretty sure Edward credits him as someone that he
learned from,
studied. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And yeah, man, that word propaganda, man, what a fun word.
It's great.
That word in Brazilian Portuguese, by the way, is the word for advertising. It's propaganda.
That's what advertising is, though. So I think that's totally fair that it is the literal translation, because even as someone who more or less, we work in marketing, we work in advertising to a degree, right? That is the purpose. It's shifting thought, and yeah, that's the whole game. When money's not sound, it's the story attached to it.
Yeah, and the thing that came to my head as you were talking about all that is when America, when people aren't rich, right? When people are poor, all that patriotism has gone. You know what I'm saying?
Totally. Yeah. It's a convenient thing. It's there when things are okay, but obviously, because it makes sense though, because if you're saying that life is so good because we are like this, then what happens when things aren't good?
Totally.
Then it's hard to continue to be fully bought in on everything.
Government. That is true, dude. That is kind of true. The government, the entertainment. That's I've never thought about it. But mente in Spanish, mente is Portuguese, mind. Obviously govern.
It's to steer or pilot a ship. It's the English word government comes from the Latin word gubernare, which means to steer or pilot a ship.
Yeah, I wouldn't be too surprised by that one, man. So the gubermenti.
So I'm seeing different definitions on Reddit. It says it means to govern the mind or to rule the mind. So Google says that it does not mean that, but then Reddit says that it does.
Well, yeah, and I mean the word government, if you look at the pure definition of government, then yeah, you could just take that. But it is too well. I couldn't tell you if the mint is a part of that linguistic piece of mente or not. But the govern, you definitely don't need the whole word government to get the word govern. You see what I'm saying? Gobierno, and then here I forget the word, but it's governo or something like that. And so it's you only need those first 3 letters, to get that first meaning. So then what is the rest of the word, I guess, But
Artie's asking,
interesting thought.
Are you saying that only rich people are patriotic, or those that believe in the dream of America? I don't want to speak for Keith, but how I was interpreting it was more like that can change really quickly if your situation changes.
Yeah, no, I definitely don't think that's the case, right? But overall, if you look at society, where has patriotism gone, right? Could you see there being a close correlation to everyone, right? Not being as patriotic as they're not as prosperous financially. It's kind of more of what I'm trying to point to. But definitely plenty of poor, patriotic people.
Yes. What's the next story you got? Sorry, go ahead.
But I do want to think about that too, because I was thinking about that as I was saying it too, because it's but those people, are they still patriotic, or are they actually, because what they're saying now, this is in my head, projecting, is these other people are ruining our country. So it's like, I guess patriotism is a different, I don't know exactly what that word means, because what I'm pointing to is that guy is also upset about the state of his country.
Mhm.
He's not proud or happy about how it's going now, right? So, and that's why he's racist or whatever, right? Because because of the economics, right, pushing him down and him trying to find something, there's someone to blame.
Mhm.
But is he a patriot if he's like, my country's going to ish? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that would come down to debate, because that's also a big thing in the UK, right? Because they have a lot of internal struggle going on with all this stuff as well.
Yeah, and I'm sure that you still consider that person a patriot, but it's just a question of the same effect is happening. He's losing his faith in this
Yes.
country.
And Howard now says words are spells. That's why it's called spelling when you build a word. It also, like, language is such a flawed mechanism of communication because everyone has a different relationship to words, even, right? So in the book that Public Opinion, that's the thing, right? Is that you can say one message and it means completely different things to different people, and even their interpretation of the words that they're reading comes from the image that gets created in their mind that they play over and over again, and then that creates how they feel about it, right? So even front loading specific things can create a different interpretation to something that happened. So yeah, words are a crazy powerful control mechanism, and they also, like, things don't translate that well over time because language evolves so rapidly that all these things that we're looking back on and we're having to trust people who translated it, it's like, I don't know, man.
Yeah, when I was in high school, I started reading a collection of essays by a philosopher named George Herbert Mead called Mind, Self, and Society. And it goes pretty deep into the things that you were just talking about. I think there's like three different major things. I've talked about it before. I don't really remember all of them, but it was like the one I remember is behavioral symbolism. And it's like we have symbols that mean things, and like for instance, you can communicate symbols without words, right? A logo, right, could be the Google logo, but it does stand for the word Google, and then it stands for the company Google, and then whatever your relationship is with that, right? But yeah, no, that idea that everyone has their own relationship with words was kind of one of the things that he was studying through some of his essays and whatnot. But yeah, just for anyone who finds any of that stuff interesting, I should probably read it again.
Totally. Brian says on the topic of language, referring to me, language is a flawed communication mechanism. I have to push back on that. What I think I don't think that's really arguable. It may be one of the best ones that we think that we have, but it doesn't mean that it's not flawed.
Wait, what is?
Yes.
Yeah. No, I mean, I love that because yeah, when you said it, you could easily be like, like, well, what are the other options here?
I'm not saying that we know a better option, but I think it's definitely flawed because of the human component to it.
No, for sure.
You have to make it more like math for that not to happen, right? It has to be like agreed upon. Like I feel like numbers is one of the things that you can't argue as much, whereas words, it's like a feeling state kind of deal. So it's a lot more open to interpretation.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, math, right, is different than spoken language. It is, as some people would say, the language of the universe, and cannot be argued with. One of my math teachers was like, he was a math weirdo, and he just was fascinated, and I respect that and love that. I just never got into it until I could see why he was so passionate about it in those terms. But anyways, yeah, there's different ways of communicating.
Totally. As Helio Font says, we communicate a lot of things without language, no doubt.
Yep. Next piece that I have, we have some people commenting on Trump capturing the states. So Anne Applebaum is a Pulitzer Prize-winning historian and Atlantic writer focused on democracy, authoritarianism, and Eastern Europe. She says that Trump and his allies are turning public institutions into tools for personal, political, and financial power. Let's hear her say it.
Small group of people. America's democracy is under attack because there is a small group of people around President Trump, and including Trump himself and his family, who are attempting to try to capture the state. In other words, do the opposite of what a democracy is, to make the state institutions belong to them. So rather than having, say, the broadcasting regulator be something that serves everybody and seeks to find regulations that are good for all Americans and increases access and accountability for Americans, what it seeks to do is bring more power to Donald Trump and to his party and to his family. It's the normal way, or rather the most common way in which democracies break down, when you elect someone to power who has malign goals and who is seeking to undermine the political system. It's happened in Venezuela, it's happened in Hungary, it's happened in Turkey. It doesn't have to be a right-wing movement or a left-wing movement. It's simply a movement of people who want to capture the political system. And it was clear to me years ago, actually, that this was the aim of Trump and people around him. And in his second term, he's been able to do it. It's a big subject. It's got many nuances. You could look at what he's doing to media. You could look at what he's doing to the legal system and the Department of Justice and the FBI. You could look at what he's doing in foreign policy. But overall, if you look at what Donald Trump is doing, is he's seeking to end checks and balances, to accrue more power to himself. And as I said, to turn state institutions to his own advantage, either his financial advantage or his political advantage.
Well, if you want a third term, you gotta do it.
Yeah, definitely nothing too surprising in hearing this laid out in such a way. And but yeah, this is probably what we're witnessing. And then people are still going back and forth a little bit on the language thing. I mean, like math, for instance, as an example, is a language that goes across any Latin-based system. In fact, I don't even know if that's what it's held to. Like, I'm pretty sure math that's studied in China uses the same symbols, right? Because, and I could be totally wrong about that, let me know in the comments, but definitely across any Latin-based cultures, we use the same symbols. So it's like, it is more effective to communicate ideas and concepts in terms of like, you don't have to have a different way of doing it. There is no other way to do it, almost. So like spoken language, I think is maybe where there's like a...
Sure. I stand by the fact that spoken language is incredibly flawed mechanism. If I can say one thing and 10 people in the room interpret it differently, how is that perfect?
Yeah, and I think maybe the other place is like perfect versus what's the, like you're maybe saying like what's the alternative? I don't know, but that doesn't mean that there's not a... Same thing with like our communism versus capitalism debate. It's like, okay, well, we can point to the fact that we know objectively that capitalism is not perfect, right? But then the question becomes, okay, is there a better alternative? But that's not the conversation.
Yeah, we'll talk about it, I'm sure, in a comment. But someone had that same point from our last episode too, is that a lot of the people who are against capitalism, like they can clearly point the flaws, but they don't oftentimes clearly articulate how like a solution to what they're saying actually gets executed in practice, right? In theory, it sounds fantastic, but there's so many variables that everyone's got to consider. And then Brian said, if you guys think this is going to lead to a third term, I have a bridge to sell you. Maybe it doesn't. It probably doesn't, but it doesn't mean that people won't try.
Hopefully not.
Yeah. And also there's that bridge thing is actually an issue between Canada and America right now. There was this some beef going on because we had created a bridge that I guess Canada funded a lot more than you guys did. And there's some issue in terms of who paid for that and how repayment for that gets done in terms of tolls. So yeah, that's another issue. You guys, because he threatened more tariffs on us as well as of late. So it picked back up the beef between Canada and America.
Interesting, man. Yeah, I didn't hear anything about that. Good old America. All right. Well, next piece that I have here is Alphabet. We talked a little bit about this earlier. They're raising their CapEx expenditures. And so with that, this tops the market cap of most global companies, right? That they're expecting to just spend on AI. This puts Magnificent Seven tech giants on track for over $1 trillion in combined annual capex. And investors are watching this closely as big tech pours record sums into the race. Anything you want to say on that, Ben?
No, I think we talked about that so much today.
Cool. Next thing is that the New York City mayor slams Netanyahu as a war criminal. This has been breaking the internet. You can see that it has 83 million views as of when it was captured.
And that's just on Twitter, right?
And that's just on Twitter.
Yeah, YouTube, it went crazy too. I sent it to you and I was like, that's an absurd amount of views that fast. But he also, well, this was one of his campaign things, wasn't it? Like, didn't he talk about this for a while?
Probably to some extent. I have no idea, to be honest. I wasn't watching his campaign or too much of that. I'm trying to see what it has on YouTube real quick.
So how are you now talking about the wildfire situation? So apparently the tariffs aren't in relation to that. Trump said explicitly that that's something they'll deal with independently. So it may get worse.
Fascinating. But yeah, so he called him out. I don't know if it's worth playing the whole thing. He basically was saying, look, Netanyahu's a war criminal, is what he's saying. And that there's clearly not ways for the current legal system to like go after him. And so we'll have to find other way, almost kind of thing. But do you think we should play the video?
If that's the sentiment, then I'm sure most people have already seen it.
Okay. Cool. Okay, yeah. So New York City mayor also goes on about the situation. He tells a reporter that he's 100% serious about arresting Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Mamdani cites ICC war crimes warrant and says that Trump won't act, but he will. The clip highlights a clash over Netanyahu's potential New York City visit amid Gaza tensions. So let's hear what he had to say here, I guess.
So I was reading your interview over the weekend and wanted to ask you more about your conversations with the your legal department about potentially arresting Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. I just want to know just what your feelings are when you look at, for example, your administration also reaching out to the Prime Minister of, the Ambassador of Iran, just how you, I guess, reconcile the two of being so critical of the Israeli Prime Minister, but at the same time meeting with the Ambassador of Iran.
So I want to first clear up a few things. Our administration did not reach out to the Prime Minister of Iran. Our administration received a request from the Iranian consulate. And as soon as I heard of that, I made it clear that we are not meeting and we will not meet with the Israeli consulate here in New York City. And when it comes to Benjamin Netanyahu, we're speaking about someone who's the subject of an international criminal court arrest warrant. And he's the subject of this arrest warrant for alleged crimes against humanity, for war crimes, and he's the architect of the genocide against Palestinians in Gaza as Israel's prime minister. These are not facts of my personal assessment, they are facts of public record. And I believe that when someone is charged with an international criminal court warrant, it's something that should be taken seriously, whether it's Benjamin Netanyahu or it's Vladimir Putin or whomever else. What I've also made clear is that my administration will follow all applicable local laws. That is our commitment. That is something that we will follow through on when it comes to an adherence to local law. And that's all I have to add on that.
Thank you. And now we're going to go to Heather from News 12.
Are you looking at arresting anybody else on that list of people who've committed international war crimes?
My point is that if someone is charged with a warrant by the International Criminal Court for these kinds of crimes, that's something I believe that should be honored. And I've also said that we will follow our local laws.
Thank you. Last question.
Interesting. This is a funny comment. New York City mayor calling out an opposing nation's leader, getting Grand Theft Auto 6 levels of views is a testament to how locked in our society has become with the political and economic state of the world right now. And is that a Jaden Smith quote? But that is crazy how everyone is obsessed with this stuff now.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that you shouldn't. Obviously, there are atrocities taking place all over the world. But it's like, it is insane to think about how this is now a hot button issue for so many people that would never have even really like looked at this before, which you hope leads to better outcomes, but it doesn't seem like it is, and it just seems like more trauma across the board.
Imagine being NYPD trying to arrest Benjamin Netanyahu.
Bro.
That's just a funny thought to me. But yeah, no, it's an interesting thought.
Fumble said, how about focusing on making New York City a better, safer place to live? So Artie, you're in New York as well. Like, what is the general sentiment around him still? Is everyone still liking what he's doing, or what's going on there? Because it does seem like regardless of how popular someone is as a politician, with how messed up things are, the glam always wears off. Like, it's getting to that point a little bit with Carney. Like, Carney is definitely a lot less of this angelic figure that a lot of people saw him as when he first got in there. Like, it's starting to wear down. So I'm curious to hear how people still see. It's still pretty early for Mamdani as well. I'm sure people still like him.
Yeah, I would love to hear any thoughts on that. But am I frozen again for real?
You go and come back. Sometimes you're frozen for me, but you're not for the stream. So sometimes I don't know. But currently you are, it says. But you may come back.
Oh, no. Well, for now, the S&P crypto index, they just talked about putting one out, and they left Bitcoin out of it. The S&P, Dow Jones Indices, and Pantera Capital have launched a new 18-asset crypto benchmark. Index ranks networks by revenue generation. The top holdings are Ethereum, BNB, Solana, Tron, and Hyperliquid. Bitcoin omitted as it generates no protocol revenue. Sparks debate on how Wall Street values crypto. It's also probably kind of debatable, but we'll come back to that after we watch the clip.
The largest five are Ether, Binance Coin, Solana, Tron, and Hyperliquid. So what are the requirements? How much turnover do you expect? And what do these choices represent?
Yeah, so let's just admit that digital assets moves faster than equity assets, for example. But what we're trying to bring are the same sort of principles that we have in our equity indices into digital assets. So when you think about the seasoning period, the revenue generation, the listing requirement, the liquidity behind these different protocols for these tokens, these are the things that we think matter for serious investors and asset managers in the digital asset space. And so we think because there's this likeness between what we deliver in equity indices and into this new benchmark for digital assets, we think it'll make sense for the investing public.
But Bitcoin's not in here?
Bitcoin is not in there because it's really not one of those revenue generating protocols that we think belongs in this index. It meets all of the criteria, which there are many, in order for inclusion in this index. Now, this index, just like our other equity indices, will rebalance on a quarterly basis. The top token is capped at the 35%, and no other token can receive more than 20% of the balance in this market cap weighted benchmark.
Keith, I saw your face.
I'm just having troubles understanding what her definition is of a revenue generating protocol. I mean,
yeah, because that's a fair question. Because let's say for ETH, right? Like, what is even the definition of revenue generating? Like, are you generating dollars and cents? Because none of them do, right? Like, so like, what is the definition?
Which that's also an interesting point too, because if we're at least admitting that there's revenue being generated on chain, that's also a pretty big step in terms of institutional adoption of the technology. Like, is Ethereum in and of itself valuable, right? Outside of the USD system, right?
Yeah. Someone says, why the heck is Tron in there? Tron's got a lot of stablecoin usage, man.
That's crazy, bro. Yeah,
there's a ton of stablecoins on Tron.
Yeah, which is just so wild.
Wasn't it a copy of Ethereum?
I don't even know, dude. It's definitely probably. I don't even understand. Like, crypto has been such a phenomenon, bro. It's just so much marketing, you know. And I've always looked at that as like, all right, that's going to change at some point. But then I've just been like Solana happened, basically. And I was like, maybe it won't change. Maybe that is how this works. is it's just about marketing.
It's the communities, right?
So, yeah.
Which is obviously a huge pro for Bitcoin because of how long they've had the ability to come to it. And then, like our guest today said, how he sees that as a con, how it's been seen in different ways, in different forms. But from a marketer's perspective, if I have multiple stories that I can sell you the one that means the most to you. Right. So like in terms of people believing in something like Bitcoin, he used the religion example, right? Does the same religion mean the same thing to everybody who believes in it? I would say probably not, right? So it's like, I think that actually may be more of a pro for the spreading mechanism.
True, for the spreading mechanism, no doubt. So Bobby says revenue, use case scenarios. I mean, like, so I guess that part of it does make more sense, like the use case scenarios, because Bitcoin is Bitcoin, right? So you can't like build. I mean, you can. All right, guys, come at me. Eventually,
Tomorrow you'll have to talk about that
on Bitcoin. But as it stands, it's just Bitcoin. But like the idea of like there's just no revenue being generated is something that's a little bit difficult for me because you have the miners, right? So I think that like, I can't understand why she would say that so confidently. Ethereum is a very similar process. It's just that it's not based in real world resources where that revenue is coming from. Like if you're saying just the fact that Ethereum is a staking coin, so you can generate revenue by earning by staking. Okay, but that's even worse than the Bitcoin mining situation in terms of the security of those earnings. Like what is that built off of? It's built off of just people putting computers and just there's no compute power link to the revenue that's being generated. It's a financial risk that people are taking essentially. So, anyways.
Yes, you'll be on a Bitcoin Maxi podcast tomorrow, right? A live stream.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
what time
I was
is
wondering
that?
what you were talking about. It'd be 3 p.m.
Yeah, I think the channel's called Age of Abundance.
Eastern.
I was on it a few weeks ago.
1 p.m. Eastern.
1 p.m.
Yep. So yeah, super pumped to talk to him. I'll be asking a lot of questions, But yeah, so Wall Street excluding Bitcoin, a lot of people happy about that. This next piece I'm very passionate about, super excited to talk about this. I saw this and I was like, we got to talk about this in the show. So J.R. Smith, professional athlete, NBA player, he calls out a few guys, admits to some of the financial mistakes that he's made in life, and calls on Paul George, DeMar DeRozan, Russell Westbrook to put their money together and do cool stuff. So let's hear what he said in particular. This got 2 million views on Twitter.
I'm literally sitting next to him. I got Paul George sitting right here. I got DeMar DeRozan sitting right here. I got Russell Westbrook sitting right here. I'm literally sitting next to all of these dudes who are LA guys. I'm like, bro, I'm not counting your chips, but everybody else is. So you make 200, you make 200, you make 175, you make 150, you make 180. Why don't y'all have your own gym? Why we gotta go to UCLA to work out in LA every time? You got your own. Y'all all come from the exact same community. You want to inspire kids that look like you. All it takes is 5 of them. 5. 250, 250, 250, 250, 250. What bank gonna turn us down? We about to build this whole shit out for our community. We're gonna build gyms, rec centers, start leagues, and all that. Who's gonna stop us? We got the money. We don't have the mindset. Our mindset, we'd rather go throw $60,000 in the club, in the strip club. Go throw $60,000 than go feed 2,500 people in the hood. Think about it. I've done it. I can't sit here and be like, oh man, I'm a hypocrite. I've done this myself. I've thrown money in the club, literally, blindlessly, aimlessly, drunk, at a ball. And now I sit back like I'm a stupid ass. I could have fed my whole community 10 times over with the money I was just late on the bus.
Right.
Because I'm so wrapped into me. I got that Eurocentric mindset. I need this designer jacket. I need these jeans. I need this book bag. I need to be looking like this because the vet's got this. I'm pushing this car. I'm doing. Why? Who am I impressing? I'm not even fulfilled with me.
I realized halfway through that clip that that's the Red Rooster in Miami. So that's actually a really cool space also to be having that conversation. The Red Rooster is something that originated, I believe, in Harlem, New York. And I don't actually know the full history of the space, but the way that I received that space as I lived in Miami was that was where all of the successful African American people would gather. And they would just hang out there. It's a space for events. It's a bar and a restaurant. Incredible food. It's like a Jamaican fusion food place. And I've given a talk in that exact location before.
That's badass.
So yeah, I was just realizing that. But anyways, this kind of thing, right, is I wish we had Emmett to come on and give us his thoughts with us today. We'll have to get him to do a call in every once in a while. But all of this money that these people are receiving, and then somebody was commenting on, and we talked about this the other day because there was a guy who was like, 100 million isn't that much after taxes or whatever. And people were calling them out and they were saying like, yeah, but these guys are going to say that they didn't have any money after all that, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, there's some truth to that, but then there's also, what are these guys spending money on? And you're talking about throwing $60,000 in a strip club, just drunk, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And it's just wild to me because like, it's different when you're a kid too. But over time, like these are grown men that are making these types of decisions. And a lot of that, like I imagine probably comes from a place of just massive insecurity. Because like, why are you doing that?
I think we have an insecurity epidemic across the board. I don't think it's exclusive to one community or like male, female. I think it's universal. I think that the system is built to keep you insecure and shameful. And so like they trick you into thinking that prideful things are prideful, but they're really the complete opposite, right? Because when you're saying that, yeah, it's like it's easy to point at the athletes because they're huge, right? So like optically you pay a lot of attention to them, and then a lot of people want to have that job. But business people are the same way, man. Like in Toronto here, like the club scene is just, I stopped going to clubs ever because it was just so sad to watch, man. How this flex of achievement is really a cry for help. Right? Where they would spend thousands of dollars, and then it was so psychologically manipulative. The best bottle girls, I would just sit back and watch this stuff. I was never paying for the bottles. I couldn't afford it. So I was just sitting on the outside, or I had friends who had ones. I'd be sitting there and they'd come up and like whisper in his ear, be like, they just bought 3 over there. And then he'd be like, 5, let's go. Like that happens all the time. And these guys would literally buy them to pour them out.
Yeah, you would tell me about that,
Bro, over their watches. And so like I've seen this too many times. They'd have like a Rolex or whatever, and they're pouring out an incredibly like $500 plus bottle of liquor at the bar, right? Over top of this, and getting their friends to film it for Snapchat. I'm like, what is going on here? But what other point did you have? Because I think it's just crazy that that's where we're at, man.
Yeah.
That also sucks because like even the guys that are getting a lot of the attention, even say from girls, like they're probably some of the most insecure.
Totally.
Which is just so detrimental, because then a girl would say, oh, I'm saving myself for like the best of the best. And then they go think they're getting the best of the best. And it's just an insecure man who's not really a man.
100%. Yeah, I mean, a lot of guys, they hide behind, this stuff. And like, I lived in Miami for 6 years. So I saw myself moving in that direction to where just my whole identity got wrapped up in like my worth being my net worth.
Totally.
And like, okay, well, what happens what I learned real quick was when my net worth went up and none of those other things around me were there.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I've got other things that I need to figure out.
Yeah, totally. And Tuck says, when you're a male coming from poverty, no one talks about it, but you have so many dependents. I bet that's true too.
Yeah.
Right. You got family you've never heard of coming out of the woodwork, right? Like whenever they see the headline of how much money you've made. So it's a difficult situation. I don't want to say it's just not it's not just basketball players, right? Like hockey players, I don't see them doing that much either, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And Praveen, he said the strippers got that money. The money didn't evaporate. The strippers wouldn't have the money if they didn't do that.
Fair.
Yeah, but they probably don't need to have that
much money. But it is crazy, and it is insane to think about what you could do with that money.
Oh yeah, man. Very controversial figure, Andrew Carnegie. Super controversial. But him, and if you look at John D. Rockefeller as well, laid out some really interesting foundations for the U.S. in terms of like, what does philanthropy look like? Andrew Carnegie made a whole list. He's like, these are the things that you can do with your money if you wanted to be philanthropic with it, like museums, places for public health, like parks, music, arts, schools, like all these things. And it's like, he's like, dying with excess wealth is crazy. Like, don't give it to strippers. He did not say that. That was not in the list. But how could you build your communities and do something that also has a return that you get from it, right? Like you build that park, you build that gym where they can come and be next to you, JR, or see what you did with your wealth in your life. Like, bro, that has a compounding effect. That kid's gonna want to do the same thing for the next kid below him.
And even if you're not making a profit, you could probably get it to a point of affordability where it's at least covering the costs.
Totally.
Do you know what I mean? Like, because obviously, if you don't have a way of doing that, it could become a lot really quickly. But if you're not trying to make a crazy profit, you could make it pretty affordable for a lot of people.
Totally. And like the guy pointed out, like you're pooling your resources. Like he said, we can't, there's no way they're going to deny us a loan. Like use the leverage. Like you guys, 5 guys put down 250,000. That's $1 million. That's $10 million. You know what I'm saying? Because if you get a loan from the banks, you also don't have to use your own freaking money. You know what I'm saying? Like you're good, bro. So, anyways, so yeah, lots of other.
I do think there'll be the fact that like JR saying that, I'm sure a lot of people will start to feel the same way because you can only buy so many things and then still feel shitty and not realize that's taking place. Like I think a lot of people do have that breaking point. It just takes a long time because there's so much convincing you that it is awesome. But I feel like there's less and less of that every day as people get more and more angry, sad, depressed, whatever it is. Someone else said, where was it? Let the people do what they want. Well, everyone can do what they want. It's not even me who has the problem with it. It's JR right here.
Yeah, he calls himself out.
Yeah.
Let him, bro. We all die. I would not, but why care if they do? Well, yeah. I mean, he's just calling himself out, and I do think it's a little bit ridiculous. The reason I care is because they don't get that mindset from their own people. They get that mindset from someone who wants them to think that way. They're not thinking for themselves.
Yeah,
that's why it's a problem.
Totally understand.
So, anyways, oh man. What was I going to say? There was something else. Oh, I've been working on this short about this concept too of like why do men obsess over making money? And something that I came to the conclusion of that I thought was kind of interesting is like one of the pieces of it is like men have got, because money now stands in as a substitute for like status essentially, like it used to be you had to go out and like be able to physically do things like build a house or hunt or whatever. But now money stands in as the substitute. And so what happens with that is, okay, so then I can get money and then I use that money to go, and instead of being strong, I can hire a bodyguard, right? Or instead of building a house, I hire someone to build my house. So like you're using this money as not only as a way to stand in for what, like for actual competence as a man, you're now also delegating that and outsourcing that to some external source at all times.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of get in the habit of like, well, that guy, I can just pay this guy to be the thing that I'm not for me. And therefore you just are not necessarily as great of a person as you could be, or as great of a father, or as a man, whatever, right? Because you're just outsourcing that to other people.
Totally.
And I link it back to gambling because I'm like, you're outsourced because the man knows that you just want to be rich. You just want that status. Well, I'm going to sell you that dream then. I'll sell you that you can just instantly get that status while I'm taking whatever it is that you have left, because you're so used to just giving someone else, right, your money in order to get that status back.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you were just working on yourself, you wouldn't need to give anyone any money to build your status. That wouldn't be the habit. But anyway.
Yeah. I think that it allows, because you can get rich in so many ways where, to a degree, you could be lucky, either like in picking something random where there wasn't that much skill involved, or even like being really good at the sport. Of course, they worked absurdly hard to get there, don't get me wrong, but they hit a bit of a genetic lottery to a degree to even be able to participate in the equation of being able to work hard to get it too, right? And so it does, it's crazy what, if you don't have the foundation in place that you felt like you are ready for it, you get, it almost amplifies the insecurities, right? If you get all this money and you're not in a good place, it makes it so much more dangerous. You see it all the time.
Totally. Miami was crazy, bro.
Oh, I bet. Toronto's like a very watered down version of that kind of stuff. I can only imagine how crazy Miami would have been.
Yeah, bro. And those people be like, they're your role models. You know what I'm saying? And like, that's what's sad about it. It's like you're thinking that like everything is pointing toward that North Star.
Yeah.
It's like, that dude is garbage, bro. Like,
I wonder how long, maybe I have too much hope in society, but I do feel like the Miami thing will die out over time.
Oh, I feel like it'll always be a piece of it, man.
Yeah.
You gotta have that. You gotta have it. It'll just be that, it's different flexes, bro. You're gonna have people with flying cars, bro.
Yeah, maybe. Money is a catch-all for the resources we are supposed to accumulate. It's in our DNA to chase resources. Money just allows you to exchange for whatever resource you feel you are lacking. Interesting.
Yeah, and I just at the end of the day, there's just certain resources that you actually cannot acquire with money.
Yeah. And
You
I
cannot
agree.
acquire intelligence with money.
True. Yes. And Brian says, money is a spiritual test, not inherently evil, but no one can serve two masters. I like that. That's good. Okay, but it can take you so far. I think we're all chasing the concept of not living an obsolete life. Yeah. Yes. I'm sure hopefully there'll be more and more things like this. And it's also kind of like on us as a society too, to stop giving attention to people who are doing things like that and give it to people who are doing the opposite.
Totally.
So yeah, we're complicit. We were ignorant in terms of how we get played in it, but that excuse is becoming less and less usable as we have more and more access to information.
Yeah. I have a project that I started like 3 years ago that was highlighting the philanthropic efforts of like billionaires, really is what I was looking at.
Current day or previous?
All. Yeah, all of them. And it was a fun thing to start to investigate. I've got to figure out how to really find the info, because you're not necessarily easily find it all. But yeah, I was reading Andrew Carnegie at the time. I was like, man, like, if we just understood that like that was the actual goal at the end of it, then how much different would capitalism look, right? If it weren't just to buy a thing, but instead to actually reinvest into your community.
Yeah. Well, there's so many people who are so rich where they're going to be hard pressed to even get close to spending the amount of money they have, even if they tried to.
It's
You know what I mean? It's a fascinating thing that even people with that much excess still feel obviously some semblance of lack within the system where they feel like they have to hoard.
Totally, man. Next piece, final story on this side. Robert Pape, U.S. miscalculation of Iranian ambitions. Robert Pape is an American political scientist and professor specializing in national and international security affairs. Asipa? Okay, cool. Let's check out what he had to say.
Points, and there are 3 points that are really the critical action points that matter here. This promise of $300 billion down the road, this is so far, this is like holding out funny money to the Iranians. These are the things that are actually short term, because this is happening now.
So
this
point one, you're saying...
Point one I want to come back to, Stephen, because I want to explain. This is Iran's strategic base.
Point number 5.
Point number 5. But what happens to become the dominant power in the region? You need more than a strategic base. You want a sphere of influence. You want a sphere of influence here. And
So I'll hold this up here.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Point number 5 is controlling the Strait of Hormuz. But many of the different countries, including Saudi Arabia, the U.S., have already started to have pipelines to bypass the Strait of Hormuz. There were plans to do this for years. They were too expensive, but almost immediately they started to do that. So the Saudi Arabia started to put out 4 to 5 million barrels of oil a day starting in mid-March into the Red Sea on a pipeline that had already been built and hadn't been used. There's a little area here called Fujairah, which is where the UAE had a pipeline. That's almost 2 million barrels a day. So 20 million barrels a day were going through Hormuz. Almost immediately, 7 million were being bypassed. Then there's all this discussion that Iraq might build some pipelines. There might be other pipelines here going through Syria. So what if you're Iran? You now control this, but notice it's a declining asset that way. If you only control Hormuz, within 5 years, good chance your power is going to be whittled away. What you want to do is you want a sphere of influence. So what Iran started to talk about is their security resistance belt, where they wanted to control. And they've said from the Mediterranean to the Red Sea to the Gulf. This was the leaders of the Revolutionary Guard. And why would you do that? Because you want to prevent all of those bypasses to Hormuz, and they're already happening. And where's the key one? You already have the Houthis down here. You have Hezbollah here, but you want to make sure the Houthis are pretty secure right here.
So just again, for the people that can't see.
Yeah.
So you're saying the Houthis are pretty secure where?
The Houthis are pretty secure down here in Yemen. They've been fighting with the Saudis for quite some time. They've held their own. We fought a war with the Houthis in May 2025 to try to get them to pull back from a temporary shutdown of the Red Sea, and we lost essentially. So we couldn't beat them. But the big one that was at issue was Lebanon, and my point is, it's not so much that they love Hezbollah. They do, of course. They've had long time, decades of relationships with Hezbollah ideologically. There's good reasons for that, but there's something else that's a power reason that's being ignored here, which is you want Hezbollah to have drones right here in Lebanon. So if there's a pipeline that comes out here through Syria, if you've got some other pipelines that are coming out here, you've got Hezbollah here that can act as your Houthis. They can actually attack the shipping. So now you have you're Iran, you're a major power, you're the dominant power in the region. You don't just control this area here and
the Strait of
Hormuz and Iran itself. You have an arc, a security arc here that is a sphere of influence, but it's an operational sphere of influence. This is not just a piece of paper or something to talk about. This is what's guaranteeing you control all of that oil, whether the oil from the Persian Gulf comes out through Hormuz, whether it comes out through Syria, or whether it comes out through the Red Sea. And that's what Article 1 is about.
Well, interesting there for sure. No doubt about it. Yeah, it's an interesting thought. If the U.S. had to fight a war against the Houthis, I think they'd win, though, right? And if they only had to fight a war against the Houthis and the rebels and the Hezbollah, they'd probably be able to take them out. And then maybe that's the work. I'm not like, this is not endorsement. That Israel is doing in the first place, right? Like, I've never thought about that's why Hezbollah actually matters, right? It's because of that piece of it. I never thought about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, interesting stuff there. But yeah.
Well, I think a lot of the rhetoric around America's military not being what they say that it is, people are like, okay, if it's so great, like why wouldn't they just win instantly? Your camera went, but it's the variable of optics too, right? Like you have to consider that as well whenever fighting a campaign, especially where there's so much turmoil inside your own nation. So it's not like we've seen the true potential, right? Because they have to balance how is this going to be perceived. So yeah, you hope it doesn't come to a true outright conflict, because that's the only way you'd ever actually see the true capabilities.
Yeah. Sorry, looking at the chat. But yeah, no, for sure. I mean, well, hopefully we never see the true capabilities of any military force at this point, because we got nukes everywhere.
Yeah, apparently. But yeah, I'm sure there's some black budget crazy tech.
Yeah, dude.
Where are the aliens, by the way? What the hell?
Poof.
I thought they were coming. I guess they we had the World Cup, so they had to wait a bit, I guess.
That's true.
Yeah, I thought, yeah, they'll need it as a distraction when there's something else going on.
Well, we talked about them being a potential World Cup reveal, yeah.
Yeah. I guess they want to keep that, because that's the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, that's true too. You can't actually play the card because you can't bring it up again.
Yeah, the amount of people. Yeah, it's been such a long, drawn out thing. The whole UFO alien thing. I think that's why a lot of people are like, it couldn't have been stuck around this long and be fake. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, we're good.
Yeah.
Is it the last story?
Yeah, that's the last story there. I just got some memes to go through.
Cool.
Pretty sure we've got some dank memes today. Let me see if I can find.
Would the war even stop if the aliens showed up?
I mean, probably not.
Yeah, I think it depends on what the aliens are, in terms of like what their capacity is too, right?
Yeah.
Because like a lot of people believe that they're not allowed to interfere with our own affairs. So until we raise ourselves as like our consciousness, then they leave us alone to a degree. There are no aliens, only angels and fallen ones. But y'all aren't ready for that conversation. I feel like that's pretty common now. People have that conversation.
Did JD Vance say that?
He did, and then he went back on Rogan too, pretty recently,
yeah.
very recently, and people were not vibing with that, man.
Yeah.
People really dislike Joe now, man.
That's wild.
Like, it's very common.
I guess he had it coming.
Man, even in one of my clients' channels, he had a guy on who all he did was reference that he watched a Goggins podcast on Rogan. So like the focal point was Goggins.
Wow.
Okay, and then the person said, "Oh, he liked the Joe Rogan episode. I'm out."
Like someone commented that?
Yes, and then had 4 upvotes. It's like y'all are crazy.
That's nutty.
Yeah,
that's intense for sure. All right. So first meme here. Engineers choosing their career path in 2026. This was a response to defense company or an anime studio, which was, I guess this is an ad coming out from Andrew Industries, which is a defense company. And this guy was like, this is what engineers are having to choose between these days. It's like, are you going to go work for NVIDIA and build the data center future, or go deep into the defense sector and drop bombs on people, essentially, right? But I thought that was an interesting reality of probably what it looks like.
But I guess how different is this from the people that were going in to build social media? Like, look what it's become. You know what I'm saying? Like in terms of how its impact on society.
True. Very true, man. Next piece that I have is Chase Passive Income responding to this guy. So Bismo Funyans said, Chase Travel, you expletives, You charged me for June 31st. June 31st. That date doesn't even exist. So it looks like you had a rental car and you got a charge, and Chase Passive Income said, new passive income hack just dropped.
That's awesome.
That's pretty good. Don't think I've ever seen that before, and I think you'd probably be able to get me on that because I don't think I'd be paying that much attention, but that's a wild one. Machine Learning Engineer said, just heard a youth say, on Claude instead of on God.
That's crazy.
Wow. Wow, that's pretty good.
People really like Claude, man. We even had someone comment on our post for this episode saying how she really likes Claude. So people really like Claude.
That's wild, bro. And then another one we already did go over, which was the Claude thing with Anthropic, Amode saying, give us your data, it's a problem, but give us your screen recording and it's all good. Let me see.
We can't see your screen anymore if you were trying to show it.
Oh, isn't yet, but I will just so you guys can see real quick. That one.
Yeah, that's the meme I was referring to.
Yeah. And then Planet of Memes said the bad guys have evolved.
That's crazy. That's really funny. So instead of candy to lure kids in, they lure them in with compute.
Free RAM and a free terabyte of solid state disk. Oh, and this one was pretty good. Good call. Sharp. So 911 operator said, 911, what's your emergency? Caller, I'm trying to report a bear on top of a light pole.
56.
Are you calling about a bear?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, it's on the power pole.
Yeah, it's alive.
Yes. Just leave it.
Okay.
And I already called the Game and Fish, and they said there's nothing that they could do. They could go and shoot it, tranquilize it to get it down, but it's gonna end up. If they do that, then it's gonna fall and could hurt itself. So they told me that.
I know. I'm on.
Is that real?
I don't even know, but I saw a response to that was a little bit. But yeah, so he said bears are killing themselves, and you're not bullish. News accounts. But
it's so annoying that we have to ask, is it real all the time now?
Dude, I sent you that one guy, bro.
Which guy?
That one guy, dude, he's farming, bro. So he has a reaction channel. And the dude's reacting to straight up AI news, bro.
Yeah, and then he's like calling out the people in the chat for saying it's AI, as if that shit was crazy.
Bro, like, where are we at, dog?
And I sent you a page on Instagram that's kind of taking advantage of people's desire to look real, where it's like the horizontal view in a very generic looking bedroom, and it's AI, and he's getting crazy levels of engagement.
You're coming through like a robot for me, but I did hear you. I wonder if it's like that in the chat. Are you guys hearing Ben properly?
Can you hear me now?
I hear you much better now. But yeah, like
the guy's video.
The one on Instagram or the one on YouTube?
The one on Instagram.
Okay.
If you got the YouTube one, you could show people because
no, I won't expose them.
It's become crazy how people will literally do anything for views and money.
Yes, because that's the part of it that's messed up. So to fully break this down, you guys see all these like TikTok reaction videos on YouTube where people sit back and they just react to stuff, right? This dude is taking TikToks and whatever that are just straight up people, like it looks like real scenarios and it's real stuff that's happening. For instance, like some law changed about food stamps. And I think this is the exact example. And like people are freaking out about like, oh, people shouldn't be getting food stamps, whatever. And so it's these like AI videos of people like getting dragged out of the store by the cops because they're like freaking out about their food stamps. So it's like real emotions that people have about these topics, but it's completely fake videos. So it's like, bro, what? And then people were like, yo, this is AI. And then he says to them, oh, like you guys are the problem, like worrying about whether this is real or not.
Crazy gaslighting.
Bro, are you serious? That's crazy.
So look, this is the AI page I was telling you about, and they're trying to make it seem like it's a real person. So it's like they're even having like a generic email to make it seem like this could be a kid, right? And this has 27,000 shares on one of his videos, and this is AI. You can know one tell is typically the voice and the tone, and the mouth moving. Those are usually the big giveaways. But it's also more nefarious because obviously it's trying so hard to look real and like vintage, and also because he's so small in the frame, it's harder to pick up on those cues unless you're looking for them.
Totally.
And I was reading through the comments, Keith, and I guess people just don't care. But these comments were crazy. He's so young and already broken. Should I cry or laugh? Me realizing the best friend you have is in you all along. I've never belonged. It's really nefarious. Like these people are taking advantage of people's internal stuff to like act like they're getting some sort of connection, and it's done through a computer. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And not Hermosi, sorry. What the heck's his name? The guy Mosseri, the guy who is the head of Instagram. He put out a post today basically saying how Instagram believes in AI and wants to empower you to use AI in your content, and he was getting absolutely torched for that.
Interesting. I'm trying to find this clip from this girl who I think follows some of our stuff. Because she actually, like, just this whole thing about us getting so much from these online mediums. Because the problem started then, right? It really started there. Because okay, AI is now in control, so we're super screwed. But even like the random dude on the other side of the planet, like saying stuff. I was literally making a short about this, and so to hear her say this so well together was like, let me try to give her a shout out. Yeah, okay. So her name is Critical Babe Theory, or Francesca Root Dodson. It's her full name, and she has a podcast called Critical Babe Theory.
Here's what I don't get about social media. Every time I look at it, people are just, as I scroll through, people are just telling me like what to do. They're telling me how to style my large sweater. They're telling me how to do eye makeup, eyeshadow on a mature eyelid. They're telling me how to get through the weekend with my 3 kids. And what I don't understand is like, why would I ever take the advice of anyone there telling me how to live? That's it.
Yeah, I was having that thought literally yesterday. I was looking up purchasing a dumb phone, so like I can't even go on the platforms, and I was like, I'll probably just only post via my laptop, right? Because there's almost no utility if you're of sound mind to even attempt to partake in the conversation there, right? You had this experience where the guy was just projecting his own view of something, but the Matrix was the context, right? Where you made a video about how people overdo the whole thing, the Matrix. And it's that every time, dude. The experience that you had there is why I'm just like, there's no fucking point. Because they don't actually want to get to the right answer. They just want to feel like they have it. Right. And so I think people have just lost their sense of agency in the world. So they try to manufacture it by feeling a sense of competence through a comment section because they also know there's no risk. It's also why I have absolutely no respect for someone who will be an asshole and won't step in the arena. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, if you want to come on the show and you actually have something to provide, or when they dunk on you and it's like, okay, then go post videos, bro. If this is so elementary and you're so much smarter, then go prove it, man. Like, that's awesome. Go ahead and do it. I'll watch your content. I say that all the time. I'm like, go start your show. I'll be one of your first viewers. Let's do it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that was fun because I mean, the dude saw the post. He liked. So I put out a post. Someone made a comment. They were like, "Oh, but you're making assumptions, and you need to start with your definition of this." Like, okay. I made a video response. Basically, what's your definition of this? So, like, what can we have this conversation? And then he liked the post, followed me, and disappeared.
One thing that really, because I've been in the social media game for almost a decade at this point, and so you get to kind of see the other people. And I used to go to speak at conferences and stuff like that. So you get to meet even the people who are like the elite of the elite. And a lot of people out there, like, I think also why people hate entrepreneurship now is because the game changed from actually solving a problem to just convincing people they had a problem. You know what I'm saying? And so like people associate creators and entrepreneurs essentially with like reminders of their issue and the amplification of their perceived problems. And a lot of people that are even trying to solve them or saying they can't actually solve them. They just saw that talking about this got them views. But do you have the do you have the situation?
No, I just was thinking of like the thing that made me even get on that path of like we're talking to people, getting advice from people over the internet was like I was on Reddit and I came across this Reddit thread that it was literally just the title was "How can I improve?" ? And so I clicked on it and I was like, and it was this young girl. She's probably 20s, like early 20s, and it was her with makeup and without makeup, and that's it. And I was like, wait a minute, like there's so many things wrong with that. I'm like, I was writing a short about it. Like, first off, she said, "How can I improve?" Okay, can we word this differently? Like, improve what? And in what way is this improving? Blah blah blah. And what is going on? Like, why is 2 pictures of you with and without makeup about how you can improve? Like, no, there's other things here going on in life. But then also, like, we're posting this on Reddit. And it's like, are you familiar with the kind of people that are roaming around on Reddit? And so I know a lot of people go on Reddit to just like fish compliments. I think that's a big part of what
massive thing. That's social media does that as well.
Reddit, you get to do it in depth, I guess, because
Yeah.
people actually respond in depth. I don't know. It's a weird thing, dude. It's a weird thing because it's different than just getting likes. It's like, oh, you're so pretty. Oh, how come you have this experience? If I were near you, I would do it. You know what I mean? Like, Reddit's an interesting platform. I need to investigate it further.
Yeah, a lot of social media platforms I think have turned people into the worst versions of themselves. Like just because they prey on your insecurity, because insecurities are going to create the strongest reaction in you. And so it's rarely overt. It's usually like subtle, where these things will get sprinkled in, and then you spend so much time down a rabbit hole. With makeup, you can be 2 separate people. Yeah, some of those transformations of the makeup shit is crazy. Like it's insane. Yeah, it's
dude.
Yeah, it's crazy, dude. Because, and also it just sucks because everyone is so angry now at this point, where even when you do have mostly good experiences, so many people who are really angry, they also have a lot of time in their hands, and so they will like make it their mission to try to like screw you over. Like I have that with one of my software products all the time because it attracts that kind of people, bro. And this guy was like, he's like, I said there's a free trial for the app, right? And he's like, you didn't say it costs money. I said, what do you think free trial means, bro? And then he's like, I 1-starred your app, and I like I'll make sure no one buys it, kind of thing. And I'm just like, yo, like, move on with your day, brother. It's just it's crazy because like imagine if you did that walking past every store. It's like it's just insane.
Totally. Yeah,
it's all an illusion. Yeah, I think social media is largely that as well. Everyone's just trying to like trick you, right? So it's why I do think that people will eventually retreat to spaces like this, because like even in the conversation, like there were some debates back and forth, but you guys were pretty respectful about it, which is pretty rare for the internet, which is crazy.
Facts, man. No, big facts.
What do you have?
Community time.
Let's see the community. Is Sharp still here? We lost your. I can't see your camera. Can people see Keith?
Guys, I'm not invisible.
You probably can. It's probably a me issue.
Okay.
You can zoom. Cool. And RD said, that's interesting, Ben. Most angry people have a lot of time on their hands. Makes you think. Yeah, I think a lot of people aren't creating. And so when you're not creating, it's a lot easier to point at someone who is and say how easy it would be to create that or try to tear it down.
Totes.
But go ahead. As long as you can be seen, go for it.
So last conversation on Tuesday, we had Radhika Desai, the geopolitical economist. And she came on to the pod. And we had an awesome conversation. We had Sarah E. Owen say, it's great that Radhika is on your show. Such fundamental questions asked at the start and the challenge taken up. Love that, Sarah. Absolutely. It was super cool. And I'm super excited to have her back on and anyone who's talking about these kinds of discussions that we had there, because it's really good. Cypher said, I appreciate this channel, guys. Keep it up and have her back. I want to hear her talk about blockchain tech outside crypto as currency. Too many people confuse capitalism with making money and owning business. Totally agreed.
Definitely. Yeah, we probably have to give her some time because I don't know how well read she was on blockchain.
Yeah. And then Night on the Sunset, fantastic. What up? Robbie Davis dropping by to say hello.
Hello.
Appreciate you. 315, the house bid was funny. Yep. Let's see. Self-reliance. Stupid question. Are you saying if you have a Kraken app or Coinbase app with crypto on it, don't have that app on your phone you use for everything? Honestly, I am actually saying that as well. For like, I got taught this by other crypto talkers because apparently like there's security concerns. And so I was told, like, don't keep any crypto apps on your phone because if someone thinks that they can come up on you, they'll take your whole person, for one. They'll take you. And if you don't have anything for them, then, maybe they'll have to let you go. But anyways, yeah, like air gapping, meaning keeping devices that have things that require internet connectivity offline, right, until you actually need to use it. So yeah, totally. Your computers, your phones, all that. Have an Android. Go buy $100 Android. Put it on that if you need a phone for your stuff. And even that, like, the apps are not, like, there's another layer of security problems. You're not just talking about the iOS, the operating system, but then you got the app itself on your phone. The app has a bug. You got a different problem there too. And sometimes mobile apps are not built the same way as the desktop app, and certainly aren't treated with the same level of security. So another thing to just keep in mind there. Next thing, Self-Reliance OS said, I feel like most socialist thinkers can criticize capitalism like experts, but don't provide adequate solutions. I see a pattern of not answering critique questions directly, not providing adequate responses to pushback, and unsatisfying solutions to the problems. Feels good on paper, but doesn't survive its translation to reality. Still seeking people who think differently in case I'm wrong. Thanks, guys. Super grateful for the addressing of isms in this direction. Yeah, I would love to like go hard on that concept. It's relevant too. Everyone's pretty mad.
Definitely. Yeah. And she drops some awesome stuff in there, but I think everyone has their own view of things. It's also very easy to say this thing is perfect when there's not as many clear current day examples of its like flaws. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think like self-reliance, I think that goes both ways. Like, and I will point to China. Like, China has flaws, but they've lifted hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. So like, you can look at that and say, okay, the trade-offs that they had to go through for that, was it worth it? Is it worth it? And then poke any holes at whatever's going on there. But I think it goes both ways, that like, it's obviously like, it's easy to criticize capitalism because you see its effects and how it's not working for everybody, for most people even.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And I think sides on both sides typically have these very firmly held generality beliefs where they lose the other side. All right. Like when she said, if you think you're doing well because you're smart, like that's, you got another thing coming. It's like, both things can be true. The system can be messed up and someone could be successful because they're smart and they worked hard. Like why can they not both coexist?
Totally. And then I gotta comment on that in a second, but I'm gonna come back for a second because, like, for instance, what was the thing? Like I think a lot of the conversations get stopped because of misconceptions about things. Like, for me, for sure, I know that that's what happened. Too many people confuse capitalism with making money and owning businesses. Like, that's been me for a very long time. So like, there's also so many things that if we understood each other's perspectives a little bit better and weren't so quick to get cut off by certain types of statements and things, we might actually get to where it's like, oh, like, do I need capitalism to get this outcome? Do I need communism to get this outcome that I'm looking for as well? And we'd have much better conversations about this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
As an example, do I need capitalism to have a business or to be able to retire early? Was the question that I ended up realizing was the thing that I was trying to achieve.
Mm.
And the answer to that might be no, actually.
No, yeah, it makes, well, even in her interpretation of things, like if you did really well and you're splitting, then it'd still be doing really well.
And then on the communist side, do you need communism to be able to have like a safety net for people? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. And I keep on, I'm the one now getting back to communism when it's meant socialism. Socialism. Do you need socialism to be able to provide resources to everybody and have a strong safety net?
Mm.
I don't know.
Yeah, these words are just so charged where it's very difficult to have these kind of conversations because everyone's like, it's funny timing of this. Praveen says, capitalism is my religion. And I would say that people have like a religious lens on a lot of these things in terms of their refusal to even question anything.
That's awesome. He said, I am an evangelist.
That's what I was going to mention. Tux's point here too. China does have a lot of capitalistic principles.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like a funky mix for sure. And then how are you now? I got to come back to your comment because you said, I thought crypto was so secure. And now I need 5 wallets, 3 phones, and 2 laptops because of the security concerns.
Bro, it makes total sense why no one touches crypto, man.
No, you're right on, bro. You're right on, man. The chain itself is secure, but you got to worry about
everything else.
Yeah. And then let's see the next piece here. We had Jocelyn Crypto. What about the incentives that profit-seeking creates to innovate and be inventive? And then Sarah said, incentives come from creativity, which have multiple motivations, not just money. Many innovations come from outside private capital. Yeah, I mean, innovation rather doesn't have to just come from profit seeking, right? I mean, in fact, a lot of innovation doesn't necessarily come from that in its origins. Some guy was playing around with something and then created something that then ended up becoming profitable, right? And that sometimes is how it goes. I mean, you could say, oh, but he wasn't experimenting for fun, or he was only experimenting to make money. But also, you have artists who are some of those people that I'm talking about who are actually just creating art.
Totally.
And then they come up with something, and then so I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting.
It also goes the other way too, where sometimes the current system stifles innovation because there are so many examples throughout history where the existing power will put a lid on any technology that could threaten them because they have the financial means to do that. And there's also, even at a nation state level, there's a law where if it's a national security risk, the government can take patents and IPs for things if it's a national security risk type thing. And so there are so many examples of that taking place as well.
Totally. And then Tux and Tool. China only became a world superpower after accepting capitalist principles. Sarah said industrial capitalist principles, not financial capital principles. And then Tux and Tool said China industrial capitalism was only a building block to where they are at now. Manufacturing clothes and cheap consumer goods got them out of absolute poverty. Yes. That said, it was the embrace of state-directed finance, playing in global capital markets and smart debt leverage that actually made them a superpower. If they never branched out, they would have fizzled out years ago like Ben Simmons.
That's a basketball player.
That was an unnecessary dig. Tux and Tool also says, as someone who is center-left, I unironically prefer the populist right, Tucker, Nick, MAGA, over the populist socialist left, Zohran, Bernie, etc. I don't know. I feel like the far right actually has a prescription to make America better, though I disagree, while the far left's goal, unironically, is to destroy America. When I hear them attack capitalism, they just use it as a veil to just attack the West. They want the West, the American experiment, to fail. This gave me bad PTSD of the few sociology classes I took in college. I think that's an interesting idea. Like that's how the MAGA is able to capture the person who wants to be a patriot and that wants to like America and think that it's a positive thing, because the left will just say down with it all, is what it sounds like at the very minimum.
Mhm.
You know, it's pitchforks and eat the rich, literally. And it's like, okay, when you eat them, what are you going to replace them with? You know, or are you just going to eat them and see what happens next? So I do kind of see some of where the thinking is there. Anything you want to say on that one?
No, there's some good points in the chat. Phosphate said, you said earlier that the end goal of capitalism was altruistic, but the billionaire who donates 900 million still extracted 1 billion from their workforce labor, an amount they could never get without taking what their workforce deserves. Yeah, there's so many like layers of complexity to these things. And then Heliofant said, left wants to destroy America, right wants to make it better. That's also so subjective. Like, what does better mean, right?
Yeah, and on that idea, phosphate, I don't know if I said that it was the end goal was altruistic. I said that what if you tried to use that as the examples, right? Like, what if you made that the North Star? Would that change what capitalism actually looks like? Would that then, for instance, provide the safety net that the socialist wants?
There's one other comment that was a really long one. Did he delete it?
I don't know, but
go ahead.
But also, like, but to your point, phosphate, I think the anti-capitalist sentiment is always that the capitalist is making more than what they deserve, right?
And I definitely see how it gets to that point. Bring back.
So yes, there's one other comment for sure. I wanted to.
This guy, it was really long. Did he delete it?
I don't know if I saw that one yet. No. And maybe it was on a different.
No, I swear it was this one. Yeah, I think he must have deleted it.
We'll see, because yeah, I'll try to change accounts too. And Tuxin Tool said, also Keats said she never said communism. Fair. But the label isn't the argument. What matters is what she's actually advocating for. All of what she said points in that direction, regardless of what she calls it. Socialist programs only exist under the surplus a market economy generates. If you want to abolish capitalism, then this can no longer happen. Sarah says her critique is Marxist. She seems to like the mixed economy of China, where vital monopolies are controlled by the state for the public good, not for private finance. Yeah, I guess, like, see, so yeah, like, we'd love to have her come back on and say, okay, what should it be like?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there's less of that. It's just like, this is broken and it's so clearly broken, and they see that they say this would be better, but then when you poke clear holes in it, they're just like, no, you're wrong. It's like, okay, I'm trying to see how I'm wrong.
Yeah, I need to do more of the reading myself. I know that.
That's what this comment was basically saying.
Yeah.
The long one. He's like,
it
was funny. Okay. It was super funny. He was basically roasting us. He's like, you guys don't know history. And I'm just like, we've talked about it on the show before, where if you're going to roast someone, like, say how it would be done better. And then he edited it and then added in the sources. So I was like, cool.
Yeah, I do remember seeing a glimpse of that. It would have been cool if he left it there, because, I mean, we're all open to that, you know? Okay, yeah,
like,
so...
Is it still there?
It's there, yeah, just not from this account, I guess.
Interesting.
Need to switch accounts. It's pretty long, so I don't know.
Yeah, you don't need to. It was more so if you want to learn more about the things that were being discussed. He gave some things to look into, some names, all that stuff.
I guess I can only see it in the back end. I don't know why it's like that, though. I guess because it's so long. Probably like... Okay. Let me find it.
It's super long. People can go look if they want. It's not that important. Like, it was a great comment. I'm not saying the comment wasn't important. I'm just saying we've already shown a ton. But I like the fact that he then said, okay, like, here's where you went wrong. Now here's what you should look into. Because I don't think that was there when he first left the comment. He was just kind of roasting us.
I can read it from my phone real quick. Look, he said
it's a lot to read, dude.
Luvendran. I'll get some, just like, so people know what to look for, like what to look into. If you really want to understand how capitalism fails, study India, he says. India was the richest country on the planet in roughly 1750. Its technology was on par with the West. It was a proto-industrial country. And then basically he talks about the East India Company that was contracted to manage the fiscal budget of parts of India, and that led to some problems or whatever. And so anyways, that's the stuff to look into. What happened with India from the 1750s. Cool. Yes. Appreciate you. So that's what I got.
Sweet.
I'm on No Dice 45, and apparently Ben might have slipped up, y'all.
Yes, sir. I'm on day 3 now.
I'm on 28, and there's nothing that's going to stop me. So let me pull my challenges for y'all today. What happened with India? Oh, I'm 17.
And on the discussion of doom scrolling being problematic, we do also have the challenge where you can do the social media cutback version, where you limit your time to 1 hour a day. And which apps you put in that group is up to you. So if you're still someone who thinks that you want to watch YouTube, then put TikTok, Instagram, etc. in that list. But go ahead, Keith.
Totally. Pulling my challenges. All right, I think I've got an easier day today. I've had 2 days of 5 compliments in a row, and that was tougher. Yep, today I don't have to do compliments. I like the new share button at the bottom here. It's nice and beautiful. I like that. So yeah, I got to exercise, read 10 pages, reach out to somebody, meditate, and no gambling.
On day 3 for me, I got to stick within my 1 hour of no doom scroll, like limitation of doom scrolling. Breath work for 10 minutes. So I'll get to hear Keith guide me through some breath work. Got to exercise. I'll probably go for a run for that. And then I've got to give 5 strangers a compliment. It's easy. You just say, I like your shirt or whatever. And then it always makes people light up. And then I've got to read. I will continue to read Public Opinion.
Nice, dude. Yeah, I've been, I'm rereading Propaganda by Edward Bernays. That's how I'm getting through it. Because otherwise, I would have to buy a book in Portuguese, which I actually will do once I finish reading through this again.
That'll be fascinating. That'll be tough. But you love that stuff, so I look forward to you doing that. The stuff with Propaganda and Public Opinion is that they are quite old, so the English they use is very different from how we speak today. So but they're both good books.
Yeah, I almost am looking at this book as like a philosophy book. Like it's kind of like digging into, like, well, it is. It's his personal philosophy on propaganda. Like, this is something that's not inherently a bad thing. He's trying to convince people of why the word propaganda is not a bad thing, the way that it's been painted, due to the way that things have happened in World War II, I think was when he said, like, it first got this negative connotation. It was all about politics. But it was like, look, if you can persuade people to do things that are good for them, then is it really all that bad?
Mm-hmm.
So interesting concepts.
But it's really important to understand these concepts, to see them in work or at work or in practice.
Totally.
Because when you start realizing that it's taking place, like people are using the same tools all the time.
It's
like,
crazy, bro.
Whenever I have either like an intern start with me or like a friend that I teach about social media or an employee, like as soon as you see the game that is social media, you can't consume it the same way ever again, which is, I think, good because a lot of people just go numb while they're consuming.
Totally. Like, this book was written in 1928, and one of the key things that he also just did with his career was like, if you want people to change their diet, get their doctor to tell them to change their diet.
Oh yeah, the endorsement is such a huge piece where that's like kind of the point that I was making with the whole we can't vote our way out of this thing that I mentioned yesterday, right? was just waiting for that. I was literally waiting for those words when they started getting said so frequently. I'm like, that's creepy, because I was like waiting for those in that order too. So I was probably getting primed for it. Like, do you know what I mean? Like I was probably just earlier. Because that's the thing with my job. I take like top level view of like every cult, right? So I'm able to just see what's coming that will reach a critical mass like a month or two earlier, sometimes more. But and when you see it like that, you don't get too wrapped up into any of them, because you realize like so much of it is propagated.
Most def, man. But yeah, folks, that's what's going on over here. If you haven't already, download No Dice.
Join us on No Dice 45. We've been making some cool changes in there. I think No Dice 45 is a fantastic, I can't think of a better reset. If you feel like you're in need of something like that, you want to level up, you want to improve yourself, your relationship to your phone, take control over your own agency and life, strongly recommend doing that. And then once you're done, we also have our daily dues, which allows you to set daily tasks that you know you want to be doing, and you can earn your ability to watch screen time.
That's it, folks. It's a lot of fun as well. It's a fun way to make your life better.
Also, if you know of anyone struggling with gambling too in particular, we don't talk about this enough either, but the accountability partner is a big feature there, where if they were to go and use the gambling apps, then you'd be notified as well. We also talked about how you could do it with social media as well. Self-Reliance, we appreciate y'all tremendously. And also, don't be shy if you go take the No Dice 45 challenge. We are interacting with all the content and posts on Instagram, TikTok, whatever. Tag us in it. Use the hashtag. And we're super excited to continue to grow this, to raise awareness for the problems going on. But yeah, that's it for me.
Rockstar. Appreciate you guys so much. Thank you to Sharp in the background, holding it down with the production. Thank you to Robert J. Davis, holding it down in the chat.
Always. How are you now? Big shout out to you. Praveen was
Yes.
dropping jokes throughout. Self-Reliance, always appreciate you checking in. Phosphit, how are you? Always great comments.
Praveen,
Cool. Go ahead.
Where you been, man? You need to pull up more often. We really appreciate your presence. You always give us something to think about and laugh about.
Yes, always some jokes. And then Heliofont in there, always some good stuff there. Legends throughout. If you are watching this in the replay, definitely show up live. There's a great group of people here. Good discussions throughout. People keep it PG, as someone said, for the most part. And it's good fun, and people don't take things too seriously, which is great, because that's really what it's all about. No one's got the answers. We're trying to find them. But thank you all so much for tuning in. Be the light that you want to see, and we will see all of y'all on Tuesday.
Make it the best day of your life, folks.
That's it. Have a great one. Bye-bye. Where's the outro? There we go.